Hey everybody, Roar the Lions UK, Matt and Ash are here, just awaiting Ryan McCluskey as well, so we are just going to chat for a little bit while we get ready over here. Hope you are all well, hope you've had a good weekend, boys. How you doing?
Yeah, doing good.
Yeah, I'm doing okay. Trooping on. I'm glad to finally have my internet back so I can do stuff on my laptop again without needing to burn my phone and turn it into a volcano, which is always good news.
Always a good news. Howdy to everyone in the chat, to Brent DeWitt and Mark and Carlton Wood and Marcus, and to Dan Pass subscribing at Tier 1 on Twitch for his 35th month. Almost 3 full damn years. I love it. Cheers, Dan. Dan says, let's go Lions. How did you guys feel about our 2024 draft? Always felt tough to follow 2023 with that extra first. Hope you are doing great. So 2024, looking back at it now, and I don't know actually whether we're going to do a show on that. I think we probably will do after we've done the 2025 NFL draft and have a look back, but we can chat about that now off the air. I think it's a good subject. 2024, looking back at it now, traded up for Arnold, raked straw, then traded into the 4th round for Manu, I think. Or was it Manu and then traded in for Vaki? Can't remember.
I think it was both. I think we traded up for both, didn't we?
Fair. And then Meki Wingo in the 6th round and Christian Mahogany. When we look back, it's obviously going to be very hard to live up to previous draft classes. But in terms of bang for buck, do you think it's a good draft class at the moment?
It's a draft class that it's going to take the 3 years to get there's a lot of development guys taken, a lot of not now guys, which, drafting changes over the years. When you draft initially, you're trying to get as many starters as you can. When you're down the line, you've got more depth. You can be a little bit more patient with these guys. So it's a patience draft, this one is. You ain't going to see the returns right away, and there's nothing wrong with that. We're still a good team. If these guys come out, then it'll be great, but I'm not really fussed. I don't really care about draft classes till 3 years in, so I don't really care.
Yeah, I feel the same. Like, there's a lot of like TBCs on there. Like, obviously, Rakestraw, the hamstring injury, didn't really see him. Manu, well, that was picked with the idea that we would hopefully see anything from him for the first 2 years while we develop him. Wingo saw flashes of towards the end of the season before he got his injury. But the other three have come in and done pretty well, in my opinion. Like Arnold, I know we obviously had the issues early with the penalties, but by the end of the season was a pretty damn good corner. Varkey, well, he obviously came in, he was a top 5 special teamer in the league, so I love that. And then Mahogany, when we've had to play him, he's looked pretty damn good, even when he had to miss half the season with his mononucleosis / glandular fever, depending on what side of the pond you're on. So while people, if they, I know I'm looking at PFFs right now, they gave it a grade an A initially. They'll probably drop it down to like a B, considering Arnold struggles and we haven't really gotten much out of the others. But in 3 years' time, we can look back if Manu comes in and absolutely is a sick, it takes like Decker's place as left tackle, or Penne goes there, Manu goes to the right. If Wingo looks good, if Mahogany does turn out to be that really damn good guard that I think he is, and Arnold and Rachel good corners, and Varkey continues to be a good special teamer, it's a really damn good draft class. It's just, yeah, that as Ant says, the changing of what we need initially, yeah, we needed those instant impact guys. Now we kind of can sit back in a way and be like, if we need to take someone who needs to develop a bit, we've got that leeway now. So it is that we have to see it out. We can't instantly just go, well, this is what it is. Because look at Kirby. After year 1, we said it's a good pick. After year 2, we said it's a bad pick. Now, after year 3, people are whacking him in trades to go to the Cleveland to get Miles Garrett. What a change in fortunes for him over the 3 years.
Yeah, I think it's clearly, even a year in, probably not as good as previous drafts, even with bang for buck. But if you have a look at like the average draft class for where you've drafted those players, I still think it's exceeding expectations. If you have a look at the 2023 NFL draft at the 1st round cornerbacks, you have Emmanuel Forbes at 16, cut. Christian Gonzalez obviously had his injury-hampered season. Looked very good, though. You had Deontay Banks at the Giants, who has struggled. He was at 24. You had Joey Porter Jr. at 32. That was the first pick of the second round, but he has struggled. I think he's looked better than some people thought he would, but he's still struggled. Julius Brent, who I absolutely love, but he's struggled. Quan Martin is safety, really, isn't he? Actually, he says it's hard when it says DB to remember where some of these players are meant to play. Tyreek Stevenson. And then if you go back further, you've got Jeff Okuda, Jeff Gladney, all of these first-round cornerbacks who really have busted out the league. There's not a lot of successes at that position. Yeah. Back end of the first round in the 2022 draft, Daxton Hill, who I know is a bit of a hybrid, Lewis Seen, who's obviously a safety, but DB-wise, he's busted out. Kyer Elam has been on the bubble in that class for ages. Trent McDuffie's obviously been a massive success. Sauce Gardner, Derek Stingley too, but they're being drafted in the top 5. There's just not a lot of successes at that position at that stage of the draft. So when you look back and think about Arnold's season, he's been above average in recent draft classes. And obviously Rakestraw is who he is. We don't know. To mean Manu, we don't know. We can just go off the coaches saying he's really developed. Well, proof's in the pudding. Mm-hmm. Vaki, there's a question by Carlton Wood asking, what's his future? Does it become RB3? I think the likely answer is no. And I want it to be yes, and I think it could be yes. But I think that running back is so strong in this draft that I'd be surprised if he isn't still just a core special teamer and we draft in round 7 a running back to be running backs 3. And then Wingo, so someone said, is Mahogany the steal of our draft class? I think it's Wingo. Wingo I thought was terrific before he got injured. So we'll see. We will need him down the stretch.
See, the thing that hurts Arnold, probably in most people's opinions, is you look at the corners taken after him, and yes, I know it's only 1 year, but you've got Nate Wiggins to Ravens at 30, Cooper DeJean at 40, Kool-Aid 41, Kamari Lassiter 42, Max Melton 43, Sandra Still 50, and then obviously Rake Shaw 61, Ronaldo Green 64. Pretty much all of those corners, except for maybe Rakestraw, Melton, and Kool-Aid, you can kind of be like, they were definite hits. Obviously, Wiggins really good for the Ravens, even though I'd like to wind up Ravens fans on Twitter by saying it was a reach. Cooper DeJean obviously got the pick 6 in the Super Bowl. Lassiter's been really good for the Texans. Sandra Still was really good for the Commanders. And Ronaldo Green was arguably the best rookie cornerback the 49ers ever seen by most stats.
Yeah.
So it's probably just a comparison of after 1 year, these guys have done better, but arguably they're put in better positions because they're playing zone schemes. Arnold had to play the second most man in the league behind our good friend Carlton Davis. So
Ryan has messaged me saying he got stuck in traffic. He's home, but he needs to sort himself out before he comes on. So it might be between 8 and 8:30. So I said to him, we're going to make a start, and then he'll just have to join us whenever he does. You both are good with that? Did have other questions. Carlton asks whether our first 2 2025 picks should be considered starters off the bat. 28 and 60.
No.
Can I play the cop-out game and say depends what position?
You can if you want. And did you say no?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm with no as well. We've gotten to the point where we're good enough that would anyone be shocked if we drafted a DT at 28 and they didn't start because we had Reader and Aleem? I know that Aleem's obviously working his way back from injury, but you know what I'm saying, like that sort of thing.
That's...
Or actually, that situation doesn't work. I Actually, I'm struggling for positions where 28 wouldn't have like a road in. If it's edge, they probably should be a starter unless we retain Smith, which I think is probably unlikely.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. It's difficult. Also, yeah, mile marker did shout out, but I just want to reiterate it. Tom Grossi live streaming for charity this morning. Children of Fallen Patriots, please visit and donate a buck or two if you can, he says. So I've shouted that out. So I hope he makes lots of money for the charity. Charity is always good. All right, are you guys ready? And you good if we go?
Yeah.
All right, here we go.
Recording in progress.
Welcome to another edition of the Royal Alliance UK podcast, episode 328, Living on the Edge. My name's Matthew Turner, alongside Anthony Fitzpatrick, Ashley Soden, and at some point tonight, Ryan McCluskey will join us as well. How you doing, boys?
Doing pretty good. Glad to have my internet back, which I know I've been moaning about for like a month now. So it's nice to finally have that back and be able to use the internet to its full extent, such as, watching some guys who are way younger than me and way fitter than me and telling them, you're bad at this.
Yeah, doing good.
Excellent. We are here because, well, we looked at this draft class and we looked at the Lions' needs and we said, you know what? The Lions probably need an edge one way or the other. And I think I said, well, should we leave that till last then? The last thing before the draft, we can get all of our research in and done and really know our stuff. And then I think a man called Ant said, let's get it in first and get all that knowledge out there into the universe. And so we are doing just that. Hope everyone is good. We are going through the 4-3 defensive ends and 3-4 outside linebackers, because who knows what system we're going to play this year with a change of defensive coordinator and defensive line coach. We may want someone versatile, so edge players or pass rushing outside linebackers are on the docket today. We are going to be covering the breadth of the draft from round 1 all the way down to potential UDFAs. We are going to try and cover all of the first round draft picks, at least in part, but we have watched in detail individually a lot of these players, and then of course with Ant and Ryan's knowledge of the college game, I'm sure they'll be able to weigh in on a lot of the guys they haven't watched. I for sure pretty much cannot do that, and Ash, you'll probably be somewhere in between the two positions, I suspect. But we're going to go through the news as we do normally, and then we're going to get into those players. But first, please do come and join our Discord channel. Link is in the podcast episode description, or it's in the live chat right now. We'd love to come and see you there. We're going to have lots of nice draft content all the way through this spring and summer. No, it's going to be spring still when the draft happens, isn't it? This spring. College football podcast. Well, Ant has just disappeared on me. But I think this week they are going to be talking HBCU Legacy Bowl. We are hoping. So do go and check out the boys chatting about the last bowl game of the season. Of course, a lot of the attendees for the combine attendees have been announced, and the HBCU combine attendees have also been announced. There's lots to go through in terms of college news, so do check the boys out. And please do like this episode, sub to the podcast. You guys know what to do in that regard right now. And with Twitch affiliated, YouTube monetized, and there's a tip jar down below. Right. Lions news. The Lions have hired Iowa State assistant head coach and running backs coach Tyler Roll as an offensive assistant. Reportedly, this may be the new tight ends coach, but we all seem to have just as hired assistants without a position for the moment. He was a long-tenured North Dakota State coach who has coached running backs, tight ends, and fullbacks, but he was the OC there for the last couple of years. The Lions have also hired Texas running back coach Tashard Choice to the same role, so he's going to be the running backs coach of the Lions. He coached running backs at North Texas, Georgia Tech, and Texas, and was Jahmyr Gibbs' running back coach at Georgia Tech. Apparently they are very close. He's also credited with the success of Bijan Robinson, Roschon Johnson, and Jonathan Brooks, so a storied career at running backs coach. And of course the incumbent running backs coach, also assistant head coach Scotty Montgomery, who has again had interviews to be an offensive coordinator, but has failed in this cycle. He has been reassigned to the assistant head coach and wide receivers coach. He is a former wide receiver himself and has coached them twice at Duke between 06 and 09 and 2013. He's also coached them for the Steelers between 10 and 12. Notable wide receivers in that stretch: Antonio Brown, Randall L., Emmanuel Sanders, Mike Wallace, and Hines Ward. So even though Scotty moves to a different position, it's not one he is unfamiliar with. Boys, we needed to fill some of our coaching positions. There's been a lot of competition. We seem to have struggled to fill some roles. But now the movement has happened, and I know that Ant talked about it on the college show, so I'll go to Ash first, but I'm going to put it out into the main podcast world as well. Ash, these are some fairly high-profile picks for some of these positions, and maybe because some of them are college coaches initially, they go under the radar a little bit, but this is a bit of a coup for us.
Yeah, especially Jah Joyner. Like, I remember I was on the tram home from work when the news came out, and I was like, hang on, like, why behind a running back coach? What's happened to Scotty? And then it came out within a couple of minutes afterwards that he was moving to wide receivers. Made sense, but that is a move that around the NFL has been seen as a very, very good one. Like, as we said in the notes, the success he's had with both at Texas and Georgia Tech, so all those Texas running backs come out the past years that have hit the ground running. Gibbs, his running mate Jordan Mason, who people might remember as one of the key fancy pickups between weeks 3 and 6 this season before he too got injured in the 49ers backfield. All running backs that he's coached in the past 5 years or so that have come to the NFL and done very well. So kind of getting someone in who Gibbs is absolutely close to, like, he was the reason he committed to Georgia Tech. If you listen to his interview on the St. Brown podcast, he credited him. They're very close, still very were. And he's also the best friend of our new DC, Kelvin Shepherd, which is also very nice. So getting that sort of coaching cohesion still, despite losing all these coaches, is very key. Keeping Scott is key as well, because you just said this is a guy who has been getting OC looks past couple of years. Hell, when we hired him as our RB coach, the Bucs and interviewed him for offensive coordinator within that same week. I remember us panicking about that. So keeping him around and maybe moving him to another position he's good at, as I said, being a former wide receiver himself, coaching at Duke, where they had a good couple of years, and then the Steelers in that year, 2010, they made the FC Championship. Rookie Antonio Brown brought in as a punt return and became one of the best receivers of the 2010s. Obviously, Randall L. and Hines Ward, the sort of back end of their careers, having good years as well. Just a good move. And then roll as the tight ends coach. Going down to the FCS is a really good look for us. Like, the FCS is getting a lot more prominent in draft circles. I know we've dipped down there a couple of times with Swordsdorf and William and Mary, but there's other key notable guys that have come from there, like Huta Lupke, the fullback for the Cowboys, who role coached. This is going down to the FCS, getting these kind of guys is going to be a good look for us, because it just shows not only to the players now, but to coaches, if you do this thing damn well, the Lions are the kind of team that recognize that talent and put you up into the pros where you can really raise your profile. I know Roll was obviously coached running backs as well, was OC at North Dakota. Maybe this leap to the pros would really help him, and he could be in a couple of years a guy that's getting looks to promotions elsewhere as passing game coordinator, run game coordinator, offensive coordinator, and such, if that's what he wants. So it's kind of keeping this conveyor belt going of talent on the coaching side as well, and promoting guys that really deserve it.
And what do you make of all of these coaching hires? I say all of these, it's 2 and a move, but Tyler Roll to Jihaad Choice, and then Scotty moving from running backs to wide receivers coach. I know you had a little bit of a word on it on the college show already, but just to put it out there to the guys that haven't listened to the college show yet, I think you are a fan.
Oh yeah, we love it, and with Tyler Roll especially, we absolutely love him coming in. Not necessarily we know so much about the coach, but Ryan knows a ton about North Dakota State football, and I know a ton about Iowa State football, and we know how these guys play and how they operate, and he's very promising. Like, he went there, he went to Iowa State as assistant head coach. He's only been there a year, and now he's moving up into the big leagues. We're poaching guys who are ascending through the ranks, who, you know, they're on upwards to career trajectories, and these guys want to come here, and they're willing to, you know, have short stints at other places and come here, and we're getting these guys early. I never considered him as a possibility to come here because, you know, again, he's only been there 1 year, so I thought he'd spend a little bit more time, but his body of work speaks for itself, and in terms of, you know, what we run here and that, North Dakota State, they run fullbacks. We run fullbacks. Guys who are familiar with our system. Hunter Lupke is with the Dallas Cowboys. They've brought him in 4 years in a row. They've had tight ends. They've come through the undrafted route, but still, he's pumped out talent at these positions time and time and time again. And then coming to Iowa State this year, they have just looked so damn good, and there's so much good talent on that team, which, you know, he's gone through. He's credited with a big part of the movement there. I think Jalen Noel and Jaden Higgins are coming. He had 2 sophomore running backs this year who have both balled out, in Carson Hansen, Abu Sama, obviously Rocco Beck, who I'm absolutely in love with at quarterback. You know, this was a good team, which came within an inch of winning the Big 12, and, you know, he's coming and, you know, put that juice in there. But I like how he works. And again, he will be familiar with the type of scheme we want to run, and he's trained the type of positions that we have here. So, yeah, he's a rising star, and absolutely love it. Can't wait to see him. And I think he'll do a really good job here. And as for Choice, as has been mentioned, he's very well known amongst the staff here, and the job he's done in college as well, just consistently churning out talent time after time after time, and different types of running back as well. You know, not just all similarly one-dimensional guys. You've got plenty of different guys coming out of that backfield. People don't even talk about Jaden Blue, who's coming out of that system this year, who's coming to the NFL, who's going to be really good, just a really good dual threat running back, and he can coach them all. He will find the attributes, he'll find what they're strong at, and he'll make them great. So, you know, it's good. Obviously, it doesn't always work, bringing out the collegiate system, but we're a relatively young team in NFL standards with a lot of young players on our team. It's not like they're coming in coaching a team full of vets, which are probably work in our favor. And I say these are guys on an upwards ascendancy, so I do really like the hires and what they're about. I'm especially looking forward to seeing Roll here. So, yeah, I think there'll be big things for him in the future, potentially.
Yeah, it definitely seems like those hires, which are done not on NFL reputation, living off a legacy of success, but looking at what you have done very recently and the caliber of the people you're bringing on board in terms of what they can do for you right now, and hiring people on their merit. It's everything about what this team is all about. So I am hopeful, very hopeful with this. So let's move it on and actually talk about this edge class then. I think it's no surprise that the Lions are looking at edge, with Aiden Hutchinson obviously going down with injury. It really highlighted the need for it. We've got Zadarius Smith going into the last year of his contract, and there's some fairly big concerns that the Lions will not even bring him back because his contract is seen as large. The Lions save over 2 years because there's a void year on there, but they would save, I think it's $5 million this year and $6 million next, or something like that. Overall, I think it's something like $11 million that year was going to cost. Even though it's only a small cap saving this year, it's still something which the Lions could look to save on. And then Josh Pascal's going to the last year of his deal, and he has flattered to deceive. And otherwise, the Lions really don't have too much in the way of people returning otherwise. So, you know, there are some probably low risk, high reward people that we can bring back fairly cheaply in someone like Al-Qadim Mohammed, but otherwise scraping a bit of a barrel. So the draft looks obvious. That's why we're doing that right now. In terms of players that we've been researching, I said at the top of the show, it's all the way from first round to potential UDFAs. We're going to have a word on all of the potential first round draft picks as well in short, but Ash, I'm going to ask you to kick off with a player of your choice.
I'll get the sort of flashy name out the way, the sort of big one at the top of the draft. So that's Jihaad Campbell, the Alabama outside linebacker. there's a reason for the helmet tilt, so we'll come to that later. So he is 6'3", 244 pounds. This past season from PFF, 81.6 grade, 81.0 run defense, 88.2 tackling, 76.0 pass rushing, 80.1 coverage, and 61.1 special teams. He had 20 pressures, but of those 20 pressures, which came on 100 pass rushing snaps, that's a 20% pressure rate, 8 sacks, 2 QB hits, 10 hurries, 112 tackles, 23 of which were assisted, 5.9% missed tackle rate. He had 65 run stops, 2 forced fumbles, and in coverage, he had 30 targets, allowed 80% catch rate, 7.1 yards reception, 1 TD allowed, 1 interception, 2 PBUs, 87.5 passer rated, and he did get 5 penalties. And on special teams, barely was used there. He only had 55 snaps on there in the season, 0 tackles, but 0 special teams penalties. He played 781 defensive snaps this season, 112 of which was a 2-point rush on the defensive line, 637 in the box, 27 in the slot, and then 1 at wide corner and 43 safety. Of those, 351 were run defense, 100 pass rush, and 330 in coverage. So I watched 2 games of his, and they were very much on the sort of opposite ends of the spectrum in a way. So I watched his game against Georgia this year, and then the infamous loss to Vanderbilt this year as well. So the Georgia game, he got a 77.1 PFF grade, registered no pressures, made 4 tackles, missed a further tackle, 2 run stops, and he allowed 1 catch on 2 targets for 7 yards and an interception. And against Vanderbilt, he had a 42.5 overall grade. He got 1 QB hit, 11 tackles, 4 of them were assisted, missed a further 2, 4 run stops, and gave up 60 yards on 3 targets for 3 catches. So strengths of him, really, really good athleticism, like the sideline to sideline speed tag that you hear a lot. Stick it on him. This is a guy who really does flash that athleticism. He will probably be a combine warrior. He will probably be a RAS warrior, which I know people won't like perhaps because sometimes it can sort of, you prefer a guy who's a bit slower so he doesn't run himself into trouble. That might be a problem here, but he does make some really good plays with it. So against Georgia, he takes a tight end who runs a corner pattern from the opposite side of the formation for where he was. He was lined up as the will. He managed to scrape across, cover the tight end on the corner, and it doesn't get targeted. And then at the same time, a couple of plays later, he's then able to chase an end around again from that will position. It's running to the strong side of the formation. He's able to chase it down. And then another time, he's blitzing from the Mike position. He blitzes, it's a tunnel screen, and he's the guy that manages to make the first tackle 40 yards after the catch, admittedly. But when you're the guy that's blitzed and you're basically an offensive line, you're the guy making the tackle, shows a bit of athleticism. And then against Vanderbilt, again, similar plays, scraping across the formation on end arounds and QB keepers. So there was one later on in the game where he gets a TFL on a QB keeper that he scrapes across for. But sometimes it does get him into trouble as well. So against Vanderbilt, he tracks Jacob Pavia out of the pocket on a scramble, and it kind of gets him in a shitty position because he has to choose, do I put pressure on Pavia and force him to throw, or do I stick to my man? He kind of makes the wrong decision. He decides to pressure Pavia, and Pavia just goes doink, throws it over him to the player, and that's a big completion. But just having that athleticism, that raw build to go off, and the sort of instincts he does have, because he's consistently one of the first men to the ball, partly because of that athleticism, but also because he's got a very high football IQ, especially in the run game where he holds gap integrity really well to either make that tackle or to force the running back outside. He's also a very, very good communicator. So you see him on tape a lot directing traffic, pointing people. So it's potential green dart if we ever need someone else to take up that mantle. And he's also, for someone who was recruited as an edge rusher, he's got very, very good man coverage skills and zone coverage skills. So the aforementioned man coverage on the tight end against Georgia. The interception against Georgia was where he was in a hook zone. Perhaps it was a bad read from Beck, where he just throws it into quadruple coverage, but sort of he's able to drop back in the zone, read the QB's eyes, leap up and make the interception. He also hands off very well against crosses with the other inside linebacker. See that a couple of times against Georgia, and then he did it once more against Vanderbilt. And for someone who again, didn't really do too much pass rushing this year, only 100 pass rush snaps. He does show some flashes and some pass rush moves. So against Vanderbilt, he shows a spin move against the centre, and he also does a very good speed rush around the outside of the right tackle. And then against Georgia, very, very good ball rush against their left tackle. He demonstrates a swipe move against their left tackle, and then the fake blitzes where he shows the blitz drops, and then if their hole opens and blitzes through them. So overall, there's quite a lot of good there to work with, but he does have some weaknesses. So as I alluded to earlier, sometimes he can run himself out the play. So especially against play action and sort of read options, if he just runs into the wrong area, he makes it very easy for the QB then. So he did bite on a play action against Vanderbilt that led to a massive TD. And then in the same game, he bit on the QB keeper on a speed pitch option, and Pavia just waits for him to come, pitches it round him, and it's a very, very big game for the running back. So sometimes that athleticism can work against him. And he also, as much as he's got the coverage skills, sometimes he doesn't do too well at handing players off. So against Vanderbilt, he is tracking the tight end. He can see Pavia's going, so he attempts to hand off to his inside linebacker, abandons his man. Pavia sees his man and just goes doink. Again, another big gain to the tight end. And in his zones, he can drop back a bit too far. So usually you want to drop about 5 to 7 yards. He's usually going about 10. So if the QB then scrambles, they've got the extra couple of yards. That's an extra 2 or 3 yards they're gaining on the scrambles, which isn't a good thing. So sometimes he needs to be a bit more disciplined with his hook zones. And he can arm tackle at times. So if he's engaged with someone, he will, instead of trying to disengage and then make the tackle, he'll just go like that and arm tackle. And it does allow a few big plays, both against Georgia and Vandy. And despite, as I mentioned earlier, despite being initially recruited into Bama as an edge, he hasn't really got that many moves at all. He usually just relies on the speed and then trying to get around the outside rather than actually trying to engage with the offensive lineman and beat them with some moves. And he can get too low when engaging with some O-line, giving him the advantage. So he nearly gets pancaked on the rep against Georgia because he goes low, and it just allows the offensive lineman just to push him down. So a comparison for him, high end is Matt Milano, low end is Mac Wilson Sr. of the Patriots. So a linebacker who can play either outside linebacker spot in a 4-3 defense, is probably more of a traditional off-ball linebacker than a pass rusher, but he has that ability to be a pass rusher when called upon. He's solid all round. So on our consensus board, he is the first, sort of the first linebacker off the board, roughly a second round pick on most boards. I'd say that's about the right range for him. I've seen him go in the first round in some mock drafts, particularly to us, to the high second round. But he does need a bit of work if you're going to stick him out as a 3-4 outside linebacker, just because he doesn't have those pass rush moves yet. But his best fit for us and in the pros is that sort of 4-3 outside linebacker Sam role that we use with Barnes, we've used it with Rodrigo, all these guys where you just stick them down. You trust them to do whatever it is. If it's a run play, you trust them to defend the run. If you need them to cover a running back or a tight end, they can do that. And you need to pass rush them, they can do it. That's the kind of best fit for him. But as I say, if you want to trust him as a pass rusher, you need to give him a bit more pitch coaching. And we've got one of the best guys for that in terms of Casey Rogers, who's worked with those kind of guys and coached them up. So for us, probably not our first round pick, but if we decide to trade out the first, if someone wants to come up for one of the QBs and we trade down to around that 35 to 40 range and he's there, I'd be happy if we take him.
And how much of Jihaad Campbell have you seen?
Not enough to make a very informed opinion, so.
Fair. I haven't either, so we'll move it on. Thank you for that, Ash. I've also got 4 compared to 3 for Ant, 1 for Ryan, so I will go next. And I'll go for my most high-profile guy at the moment, the riser, the one that a lot of people would like for Detroit, but will he be there is a big question. And will the Lions like him as well is the second. It is Mike Green, the redshirt sophomore out of Marshall. Number 15, defensive end. 6'4", 248. PFF has his grade at 92.4 on the season. So he had a absolutely terrific year. Predominantly plays the 7 to 9 technique. So plays outside the tackle or outside the tight end. Predominantly left-sided, but will play both sides, but the majority of his reps will come on the left-hand side of the line. In terms of the year in pressures, he's had 59 pressures and 17 sacks. 17 sacks, led the entire NCAA. He also had 84 tackles, 23 tackles for a loss, 2 passes defended, a fumble recovery, 3 forced fumbles, and he was the Sun Belt Player of the Year. He's a one-year starter. He's a one-year rotational player who kind of came into being a starting role before that at Marshall. Then he didn't play in 2022. I actually didn't look at why, if I'm honest. And then he was at Virginia, but potentially maybe he had to sit out when he was transferring. I'm not sure. But anyway, I didn't look at that. Apologies. His grades remarkably consistent at Marshall when he went over there. So 341 snaps in his first year there in 2023, 719 in this most recent season. 90 plus grades at both total defense and run defense, but a big uptick this year in terms of pressure from 83 to 91. And a reasonable coverage grade this year of 69. In his tackles, he has a 13.6% missed tackle rate this year. So pretty good when you're lining up at the 7 to 9 technique, especially when you're that light and a lot of your game is focused on being explosive. What tends to happen in that regard is that you actually have the ability to make a lot of tackles because you're fast, which actually means that your missed tackle rate tends to go up fairly unfairly because you can make more tackles than most people, but only just, which makes the likelihood of you making that tackle lower than the majority of other people in your position. So the fact that it's only at 13.5% is pretty encouraging. Not a guy who really drops into coverage. He allowed 1 catch this year, so take that coverage grade with a pinch of salt. So I watched 2 games of his. The first one was against Ohio State, which his grade was 71.4 against. Had 2 tackles, 1 sack in that game. So a good grade, not great, but against his toughest opposition of the year, against Ohio State national champions. And then week 9 game at Southern Miss. In fact, I watched the 3rd game as well against LA Monroe. So Southern Miss in week 9, grade of 87.8, 5 tackles, 3 sacks in that game. And then LA Monroe the next week after, 91.3 grade, 9 tackles, 2 sacks, another 1.5 tackles for a loss, and a forced fumble in that game too. So overall, he's a tall but skinny pass rusher, plays with a huge amount of aggression at power, which, he plays so much bigger than he really looks because he does kind of pop off the screen as being a bit of a skinny one, to be honest. It doesn't look right, but he's damn good. He's going to struggle against double teams. Honestly, he can't get off them. If he ever does attract a double team, write him off the rep. He can't fight through them. He can get skinny. So sometimes if he can beat them both to the punch, he might be able to split them, but that's the only way he's going to do it. He's not going to be overpowering. He's not quite good enough with his hands, I don't think, at the moment, in order to be able to finesse his way past one of them on one side. There will be questions about whether he can hold up against the run against NFL caliber O-linemen. So when you're in the Sun Belt, not to say that that's not the best league in the world, because the Sun Belt is a very good conference, but you're not going up against NFL caliber opposition week to week. When he went up against Ohio State, he did, compared to the rest of his opposition, where he was clearly winning in both run and pass, against Ohio State, the majority of it was a score draw. He'd have some wins and he'd have some losses, which is fine. But Ohio State tackles, while they're going to be probably starting players in the NFL, they're probably not as good as the players he's going to be going up against in the NFL. So Mike Green needs to show some improvement in that, I think, in order to live as an every down player. I do believe he can do it. I mean, as a 6'4" man, there's probably room to put a little bit of meat on his frame, and he showed that he was able to put on some weight when he weighed in for the Senior Bowl. And of course, he weighed in, did 1 practice session one day, and then he left because he'd done so damn well. He is a technician as a pass rusher, so got great burst off the line. He's really good getting off the ball, and he's got excellent closing speed. He shows plenty of pass rush moves. He's got a spin in both directions. He's got a good swim move. He's got a knack of getting through one-on-one by just getting skinny. He's very slippery as a pass rusher. He's got some good counters, which he can get to if he loses the first time. it does look like he's kind of thinking about it when he does his counters. It's not like it's instantaneous, like it's coming naturally to him. But he's putting it on display, which is more than the majority of pass rushes in any NFL draft class. Most pass rushers have one move, if any, or they just speed or bull rush. The fact that he's got pass rush moves and he's got, at least he's thinking about his counters and they work in part. That's really impressive. He's a very high IQ player. He's diagnosing plays before they happen, which means he knows if he has to disengage because it's a run the other way and he's going to try and cut it off on the backside, or run behind his defensive line to try and cut it off if they get around the edge on the other side. He keeps playing. He's got a really great motor. He doesn't give up on any rep. He's ferocious in a way that you would really hope players that are bigger than him would be. Right, he's a dog. He's an absolute dog. And if you have a look at some of the other players I'm going to review in this who are 30, 40 pounds heavier than him, he plays bigger than them. It's super impressive what he can do. And I know I said he's going to potentially struggle against NFL caliber players against the run. Still, he goes up against players who are 60, 70, 80 pounds heavier than him. And he's got an anchor. Now, he might take a step back, but you're not going to be driving him 4 or 5 yards into the backfield against players of that weight. Now, if you go up against players of that weight in the NFL, is their technique going to maybe do a little bit more along with that weight? I don't know. It's going to be really hard to say. I'd love to see him put on even a little bit more weight than he did compared to where he was at the Senior Bowl. I think at the Senior Bowl, he got up to 250 odd. I think his playing weight was probably more around 240, maybe slightly less than that, maybe 235. If he could hang at 255, maybe 260, you might see him lose a tiny twitch of explosiveness, but he might be someone that can be an every down player. I think, honestly, Mike Green is everything the Lions fans wanted in James Houston, but with the cornering ability of Houston, with more pass rush polish already, and with the ability to play against the run. Even as I doubt his ability to do so, he has shown on tape against the opposition he's been against that he has some chops at it. So I have hope that he can do this. The other thing to note about this guy, which is just nuts to me, and I know I said it at the very, very start of this, he's a redshirt sophomore. He's not an old guy. Now, I know he didn't play in the 2022 season. So that makes him as old as he'd be a redshirt junior if he played that year. So it means, I can't find his age. I think he's probably 2022. He's probably 22, 23 years old. But unlike some people in this class who have kind of broken out in their age 24, 25 college season, he's still quite a young man. So I've got hope that the kind of leap that he's taken this year is something that he can build upon. Everything that I've said that he needs to improve at, I've got faith that he's going to do that. And he looks very coachable as a player, the way that he has kind of improved every year that he's played. I have faith that this is going to be a really exciting player in the league, and he kind of showed at the Senior Bowl that people had been sleeping on him through this season. My grade for him is an 80, which in my scale puts him right at the bottom of the first round. I am talking myself into moving that up the more that I think about this guy, especially looking at the rest of the class and the more guys that I've done and the more disappointed I've been with some of the rest of the edge class. I wonder if I can bump him up a little bit because he's kind of a unique player in this class potentially. I do see him going in the 20s. Now, does that mean 28? He'd be a great fit for us. He'd be a really, really good player for the Lions. I do think if they want to go and get him, that they might have to move up a touch. Maybe only 4 or 5 picks, maybe to like 24, 25, maybe slightly higher, maybe 23, 22. But he's going to be in that sort of range. I think there's enough good players in this draft where above that is going to be difficult for him to get into the teams. It's possible. We'll see. He generated a lot of buzz. But anyway, I will stop waffling. Boys, have you seen much from Mike Green. Obviously, he's the guy that a lot of people started mock drafting him to the Lions before the Senior Bowl, and that seems like a little bit of a pipe dream now at 28.
Oh, I've seen bits of him. I haven't sit down and watched a full game of him yet, but the bits I've seen for like the YouTube compilations and that, it seems like a good fit. Like, don't blame me for not knowing what happened in 2022 because no one does seemingly. I've looked through all his draft profiles, PFF, 33rd team, the Draft Network. No one seems to know. It's the mysterious case of the missing green, I guess. But yeah, if he's there at 28 or if he's in the range where we can go get him, I'd be happy to get him.
AI says that, the Google AI says that he was at Virginia and he didn't play a game.
Yeah, 2022, he just had a hiatus from football for a year. Like, no one knows. But yeah, I'll be happy with him. But yeah, it does seem like a pipe dream. He does seem to be one of those like big combine / senior bowl risers, not unlike a certain edge rusher from a couple of years ago who had a very similar senior bowl process to him. That's the kind of rise he could get, but maybe the good news for us there is that while he was a riser, he was still down to 20s. So he's definitely on my list of if he's there at 28, run the card in for sure.
Yeah, I love Mike Green. He's a great player. As for why he didn't play in 2022, I mean, I can quite easily explain that one for you. When guys transfer, they don't always get onto the team right away. And when he went to Marshall, they had one of the best defensive lines in the country. They were like fifth. So I remember I did the thing on it. They had like 45, 50 sacks that year. It was absolutely insane. You go there, you sit for a year while you integrate into the team. Second year, you become a rotational piece.
This is before he transferred to Marshall in 2023. It's that 2022 season. He was still at Virginia. He just didn't play a game.
He's been at Marshall 3 years, has he not?
No, I've just been looking at it. Yeah, he Virginia just sat him by the sounds of it, or he didn't want to play. The one or the other. But anyway, not to...
It means you'll not break through into the team. That's why he'll have gone down to find his game. But in terms of him, the player himself, he's got everything you want from an edge rusher. He's got the pass rush repertoire, and that's how he wins. You know, he's got great get off. He gets around the edge. He can bend it. He's very strong as well, considering his playing size. He's what more edge rushers need to be, and all this talk about him putting weight on and stuff is bogus. Stop taking away these guys' ability to get to the quarterback. All you're doing is using this thing that he needs to get better against the run in the NFL. Well, take some time to look at the team he's at. Marshall, one of the best running backs, one of the best rushing teams in the country, consistently elite rushing offense every year. He's going to go in training against that. In the Sun Belt, you have some of the best rushing offenses in the entire country. You have to go up against that. We talk about the level of competition he comes up against. Two Sun Belt left tackles got drafted last year. We're not talking about FCS guys here. The standard is quite good down there, and it's taken him time to adjust to it, but he's been great. And in terms of his production and that, you look at how he wins. I say he uses his strength, he uses his arms, he uses his quickness. He just finds lots of different ways to be able to go and win. And yes, the Ohio State game does raise questions about him, but you're coming up against one of the best O-lines in college football, full stop. And the guys up against you on the line, there's more than just you on that line. It takes more than one special individual to have an impact on a game. I like him. I think he does all right. He's got the athleticism and the ability to win against the run. You don't need the strength all the time. It's about not getting blocked. It's about getting into those gaps and about being able to plug and play as you need to. And he's shown that you can do that. And again, it is impressive coming out the Sun Belt. They are one of the better rushing conferences, so you do have to take note when you see how well he does against it. The way he plays is great. I love him. I love the size he's at. I love where he's at. You bring him in as this twitchy sort of pass rusher on, early doors while you adjust him to NFL caliber rushing game, and you work him in, and then you'll get a very good player out of him. There's going to be an adjustment period there. You're not going to plug and play in day one and he's going to be absolutely awesome. When you're coming up the level you are, it's going to take time, but he's great. As far as the Lions go, and again, I'll keep saying this is what we need. We need someone who has a pass rush repertoire. That is what we desperately need. Guys who can get to the quarterback quickly, effectively, and not just collapse a pocket down. And he does fit that mold. I don't know whether I personally would do it there, but from what we've seen of him, where he's been at, I like him. He's very good, and he will succeed as long as he finds the right system to work in. That'll be critical for him. He's got to find the right system. He's got to find the right coach to carry on developing him.
Do you think, despite what you've said about not having to bulk up, and I do think he showed enough that you could potentially leave him where he is weight-wise. Do you think he's more suited to being a 3-4 blitzing outside linebacker?
Would be able to tell you what scheme that Marshall used. No,
He's a 4-3 defensive end at Marshall. They were 4-3, so he was just a definite edge.
Put him on the line and let him go. If you put him outside, if you put him opposite an established rusher who is going to take up a lot of attention, double teams and that, he will be able to feast. You can get him in one-on-one situations to go after the quarterback. He'll get there, and I think he'll surprise you in his run game ability. Again, it's a very tough school. You've got to learn how to defend the run there, and you've got to have all the nuances. And he's managed to succeed in that system with it. So I think he will be just fine. It's just about finding the right guy to carry on development, but I just want them to continue pushing him as a pass rusher because there's been a de-emphasis on pass rushing in a few years for run defense. We need to start letting these guys, get home. We need, we've got to keep impact players on these rosters who can go out and make big plays. So that's why I like him for us. And if you're working opposite Hutch, you've got perfect foil there, really.
You're very rarely going to see double teams, and that was my one concern with him. Is if he faces a double team, I think that's just the end of him. So if he's not going to face a double team, who cares?
No, and even if he does, again, he's got the athleticism and skills to get through. It's just about refining the technique at the next level, and you just got to bring it out. And so again, just the coaching, just to adjust to the level of competition, it's just going to be very critical for him. If he gets put on a bad team and just told to rush the passer and that, then he's going to be in a bit of bother. But if they take the time just to refine his game up to where he needs to be, I think he'll be great. And he's worthy of all his buzz.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. All right, we're going to moving on to Ant now, but just before that, many thanks to MileMarker301 for the $10 super chat. Thanks, MileMarker. He says, pivotal time for the Lions. It is. If we can smash this draft out of the park and fill meaningful gaps in our roster with this class and through free agency, maybe it's the final push that we need to get over the hump. Ant, we're coming to you now for a player of your choice.
Right, well, I'll probably start with my high-end guy as well then, as we all seem to have done that, so I'll follow the theme. First guy I've got here is Donovan Ezeiruaku out of Boston College. Guy who I've been on for a long time now. He was on my college football to watch list at the start of 2023 after he had his breakout sophomore year. It didn't quite work for him last year, but this year he's been an absolute menace. He's 6'2", 247 pounds, as I say. He's out of the Boston College system. He's been there 4 years, and he's racked up a pretty decent resume for himself over those 4 years. 140 quarterback pressures all told. There 26 sacks, 14 of which came this year, 29 QB hits, 85 hurries, 180 tackles, missed tackle rate of just 12%, which is not bad. 7 forced fumbles, and yeah, he's been an evolving run defender year on year. It's been getting better and better, and his pass rushing just seems to have reached a new ceiling this year. Obviously, he's come out of initially that Jeff Hafley period there. He was there for his first 3 years. They play that aggressive style of defense where they like their edge rushers to get after the quarterback. They stack the box in the middle and they tell the guys on the outside to go hunt. And that's continued even after he's left this year. And I've sort of had a love-hate with it. I really liked him to begin with, and as I say, then he had a little bit of a dip, and then he's come good again. And the more I've watched, I'm sort of selling myself on him again here. So in terms of him as a rusher, as I say, he's twitchy. he's another who likes to bend the corner, who likes to get to the quarterback quick. He's got this really good two-step move where, he'll either stick his foot inside and then just hit round the edge, or he can do it the opposite way as well. He's got very violent hands and he can get to the quarterback in absolutely no time at all, which I absolutely love about him. The game I watched specifically here for him was against Missouri this year when Boston College nearly upset them. And this was a really good Missouri team. And there were just so many examples of him being able to win. He was winning double teams in this. He took down a tight end and a running back on one. He used a swipe on one move. Then he used a swim on the next one. The two guys tried to take him down simultaneously. And he just threw the both of them, was able to get quarterback pressure, and he threw it away. And they was absolutely terrified of him. Brady Cook was. There were several plays in this here, but it starts with his run defense. Now people go 6'2", 240. Is he going to be a really good run defender? Can he do it? And I've seen that it's sometimes a bit of a knock on him, but he's actually a very good run defender. Obviously, again, what Jeff Hafley and his predecessor Tim Lewis have done is they do put a lot of emphasis on stopping the run at Boston College. They are generally quite good at it, but it starts with the edges as well. And to mitigate his size, there's one thing I noticed he did in this game a lot, and I've looked through other games and he does as well. Because he is a little undersized, guys generally tend to get their arms on him first. But what he does, he's got this weird sort of little bunny hop that he does backwards. It only takes it back about a yard, and it just creates this little bit of separation with him. And he's just got this vicious swipe move, which he'll use. He'll just push the tackle out the way and he'll de-seat them from their position of power and they'll just fall to the floor. He gets the leverage battle on them, and because he's so fast and quick, he can then get in that gap that has been opened up by them, and he can still make plays against the run. So when it comes to the line of scrimmage, as I say, his counter repertoire is huge. And he just has these little ways of always being able to get off the pressure. It's very tough for tackles to get their hands on him, and especially the two for Missouri, they really struggle with that. But it's not just on the line of scrimmage. His track back in, there were 3 times in this game where runs went to the opposite side of the field from him, but he stays in the play. You can see because he's quite athletic, he's running around the field and he's making recovery tackles. Sometimes for one of them, he ran back nearly 30 yards to go back and make a recovery tackle on a running back who completely busted coverage down. And I just love the juice that he has. So he's good on the line of scrimmage. He's good when the ball gets past the line of scrimmage. But then when it comes to his pass rush, and as I say, there's just examples everywhere of him setting up guys to do things different. He'll try and hit you around the edge. He'll go down the inside. He's got a good bull rush move. I mean, the sack that he got in this game is literally a 2-step round the edge of the left tackle. He just completely and utterly destroys him. He goes really low. He's basically on his hands and knees by the end and wraps the quarterback up by his ankles. Perfect placement with the tackle as well to bring him down. And it's so hard to defend against guys like this. And it gives me a lot of hope at the next level that, again, put your size issues aside. You don't really want to put a lot more weight on him. You just want to let him go out and, do his job, which he's very good at. He's good at the run, but he's especially impactful as a pass rusher. At the next level, I would just really carry on telling him to do what he does now. You're going to send him out as this juiced up, twitchy pass rusher, go out and get sacks there and let him adjust again to the sort of the rigors of the NFL run game. I don't think his size really matters. He's got the counters. He's got the pass rush moves. I think just in his case, it's the consistency. He had the down year in 2023, but it was not a great Boston College team that last year. It's been under a rebuild, but as a lot of ACC fans will know, they are getting back to where they need to this year. They're a good team, and he's been able to benefit from that. And I think at the next level, he's going to be a very intriguing weapon. Whether we would do that, it's the same thing with Mike Green. Is it we sometimes like guys who are a bit bigger than him, and I don't know whether that might put them off him. But as far as he goes, the motor, his desire to play, obviously he's a team captain there as well, which counts for a lot. I just really like him. And I say this goes back a few years now. I've seen the development when he first came through. There's just a lot of his game you don't see there, especially the run game stuff. He did struggle with it to start with, but he spent a lot of years perfecting those repertoire of counters and everything to be able to be effective in it. And Yeah, for me, he's quite exciting. And if I want sort of like a juiced up guy who's going to get to the quarterback quick, which I really want here to go alongside Hutch, he's certainly in that category. So yeah, Donovan Ezeiruaku, I got a lot of respect for him, and I think wherever he goes, he's going to be great at the next level. You know, this Boston, and again, even when it comes down to training, this guy's been training against some of the best. There's like 5 trench guys coming out of there this year to the draft. They're all going to get drafted. You know, iron sharpens iron, and in his case, he's really been perfected. So, yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing him, and maybe his name be called for us.
Ash, have you seen Ezeiruaku at all?
Yeah, unfortunately, so this this past season, I do really like him as well. Like Boston College, as we know, they always do good offensive linemen. The same kind of goes for the defensive linemen as well. Like iron sharpens iron in training, and it did really show. Yeah, they had a down year last year, though they nearly beat FSU. He's just a really good pass rusher. Yeah, the knock is unfortunately the size, which is why quite a lot of the time when I watch my mock drafts, he's not in the conversation because partly because people haven't been watching him as much because they haven't got around to him, but also because he had the size and they choose the bigger ones over him, the more high profile guys that play for in the Big Ten or the SEC and such. But yeah, if again he for me he's in that kind of same range that I had Jihaad Campbell. That yeah maybe not at 28, but if we trade down out the first because someone wants to come up for a prospect and we're in the top of the second and he's still there, he's a guy I'm definitely considering, and I'd really like him at that sort of rush end spot. Allows us to move Hutch around a bit more. You can put him at Sam in certain situations. He's got that sort of versatility that we can really use because that's the thing with a new defensive line coach and a new scheme potentially with a new defensive coordinator. We could have use for that kind of those sort of lighter guys. Like for the most part, yeah, I've chose the big guys because I like them, but we can definitely use the sort of lighter guys. How look what Casey Rogers did with Chris Braswell. Look what the Eagles have done with Nolan Smith. They're lighter guys that they use on the line, and they've done pretty well. So.
I have to say, I haven't got there yet with him, so I don't know. I'm afraid I don't. But what I do know is where he's being drafted in recent mock drafts. And out of the last 11 that appear on mock draft database, 13, he's the Lions pick in 6 of them at 28. So he is a popular pick for the Lions right now, including by our very own Nick Baumgartner of The Athletic, who is the Lions beat writer for The Athletic. He was their most recent draft pick for the Lions. So, someone that may well have his name called by us in the first round this season. Ash, time for you to move on to your man number 2. Before we do, just to let you guys know if you're hanging on for Ryan, that he's not going to be coming on this evening. Unfortunately, he's been called back to work this evening to cover someone who's ill as his on-call ability. So frustrating for him and for us, but never mind. Anyway, we move. Ash, your next guy.
Let's stick with the ACC, shall we? But let's move to another school that is not FSU, thank God for everyone. I'm, of course, talking about the Louisville edge, Ashton Gillotte, who I've loved for a damn good couple of years, and you'll see why when I describe him. So he's 6'3", 275 pounds. That frame should hopefully be familiar to people with a certain player who plays on the Lions. In 2024, he had a 87.8 overall grade, 78 run defense, 71.6 tackling, 89.9 pass rushing, 71.2 coverage, 61.1 special teams. He had 57 pressures this past season, 5 sacks, 11 hits, and 41 QB hurries, 37 tackles, 10 of which were assisted, an 11.9 missed tackle rate, 23 run stops, and 3 penalties. On special teams, no tackles, unfortunately, but he did get 1 penalty. Played 632 snaps this past season, most of which were at the 5 tech, but he has taken snaps from the 2 wide to the 9 tech. Also had 7 snaps at off-ball linebacker between weeks 7 and 8, which is interesting, and played 75 snaps on special teams. Unfortunately, Caddy's only had last year's film on him, so I watched this game against Notre Dame and Kentucky. The game against Notre Dame, 63.9 overall grade with 59.7 run defense, 73.3 tackling, 69.2 pass rush. In that game, he had 6 pressures, 2 sacks, 1 QB hit, 3 hurries, and a run stop. And against Kentucky, a 75.8 overall grade, 77.3 run defense, 76.8 tackling, 63.9 pass rush, 4 tackles, all of which were solo, a sack and a QB hit, and 5 run stops. The strengths: he can rush from both a 2 and a 3-point stance, so that's obviously standing up with his hand in the dirt, which was suggested obviously with him playing from the 9 techs to the 2i. You're going to have to do that, so you can use him across the line. Has really, really good play recognition, which comes from him playing 4 years of football, and that combined with a high motor means he's never far from the ball. So he chased down an end around against Kentucky, and while reading another one earlier in the game, and unfortunately just missing the tackle, in the same game, he anticipates to run through his gap and just signed a sit there and just lets the running back come to him and tackles him, not giving the running back the chance to sort of fake him out, just goes, come on then, and just wraps him up, gets him down. And he also then, in the same game, holds the B gap on an inside zone, which forces the running back outside to get tackled. And then against Notre Dame, he reads the run really well on back-to-back plays, but the running back just fakes him out both times, just misses. His versatility also means he can be used on twists and stunts. So there were 2 instances against Notre Dame where he starts at the 7 tech and then twists inside to the A gap on that same side. The first time, got a sack. The second time, Notre Dame kind of pick up on it, and the center's there to beat him. But Gillotte employs a swipe move to get past him to pressure the QB. If he doesn't get close to the QB, you can see he's about to get the ball off. He does the good thing of getting his hands up in the throwing lanes just to put him off. And because he's got such a vast amount of experience, he's got a variety of pass rush rooms he can use. He's used a spin, a ball rush, a bend move, a dip move, swipe move. He's even one where he sort of stutter steps against a left tackle, and he also has a swim move. But despite his size, he also has the speed to shoot the gaps when he's deployed inside. So against Kentucky, there's a key sack on the 3rd and 7 where he just shoots the B gap perfectly from that alignment, and he sacks Devin Leary, and it forces Kentucky out of field goal range. And against Notre Dame, he nearly gets a tackle for loss on the run play where he shoots past a nub formation, the strong side of the formation. And there's another instance where he just anticipates the snap and he's able to shoot between the right guard and the right tackle for a QB pressure. And he's very productive. Like, you got the aforementioned sacks. Against Notre Dame, there is an instance where he literally pushes the right tackle back into the QB, which hurries their throwing motion, which forces an overthrow, and what otherwise would have been an easy touchdown for Notre Dame. And he also forces the left guard back into the QB for a half sack against them. And then against Kentucky, there was a stunt which led to a sack for someone else. They ended the drive in the red zone. And he also deployed a spin move against the right tackle, which forced a QB hit. And that QB hit affected the QB, and they threw an interception. The weaknesses of him: fortunately, he is on the older side. He is a senior. He has played all 4 years. He is about 23, 24. Again, for some reason, his date of birth's not out there. And he can sometimes get too low coming out of his stance, leading to some losses. So on one of the first plays against Kentucky, he is literally pancaked, which is a bit unfortunate. And because of that sort of low stance, he can be driven out the play by some more powerful squatter sort of offensive tackles. Think your Jordan Mailatas, your Penei Sewells. Those are the kind of guys he's going to have some trouble against. My comparison for him, and I felt really bad for saying this, but given all the time I've watched a lot, it's just a player for the Lions that just pops into my head. He is what Josh Paschal was supposed to be coming out of college, which is a bit ironic considering one of the games I watched was against Pascal's Kentucky. Both have very similar profile, which is why I mentioned earlier the size. I think Pascal's 6'4", 275, very, very similar frames. But Gillotte was a lot more productive in college. So both played almost the same number of games. So Gillotte's played 51, Pascal's played 52. Yet Gillotte had 2 more tackles for loss in their career and almost a double the number of amount of sacks. So Pascal had 13.5 over his Kentucky career. Gillotte has had 26.5 so over his 4 years at Louisville. But if you don't like me ragging on Pascal, another good comparison for him is AJ Peneza, a kind of squat, solid defensive end that you can play as a big 4-3 end and an even front. But if you play 3-4, you could also play him as your 3-4 defensive end and flex him out to outside linebacker if you want. Very technically sound, can pass rush, can run defend very, very well. So overall, on our consensus board, he's the 13th ranked defensive end and the 64th ranked overall prospects, which puts him right at the end of that second round. I'll have him as a mid to a higher round 2 player. He definitely isn't worth 28, unfortunately, because of that age, just the lack of developmental upside that you usually look for in the first round. But if we go elsewhere with that first round pick, interior defensive line, offensive line, Banty's there at 60. I'd run the card in personally. I absolutely love this guy. And if that is what we do, if we go Walter Nolan, I'll miss, or we go Grace Bell, we try and shore up the interior of one of our lines first. I will be pounding the table for Gillotte when it comes to 60 because I absolutely love the guy. As I said, he operates best probably as a big end in a 4-3 front, kind of the Josh Pascal, Marcus Davenport role, with that ability to move inside on passing downs if you need to. But he can also operate as a 3-4 defensive end if you want him to, especially if you put that 5 to 10 pounds of functional weight on him that you usually want, two of those things. So overall, I absolutely love Ashton Gillotte, and he is probably going to be one of my guys that I won't shut up about for the next couple of months. So God help you all.
And have you watched any Ashton Gillotte? You are on mute, sir. Sorry.
Yeah, I've seen enough of him over the years. He's really good. I agree with that. You know, we've both seen a lot of ACC football. I've watched him rip apart my Wolfpack as well. Everybody has been on his end, but he's right. He's got the size, he's got the speed, he's got everything you need. I know, I mean, talking back a couple of years when they first started talking him, one of the problems they had with him was he was a little bit of a tweener. They didn't know whether he was on they were going to play him inside or out the edge. But the last 2 years, noticeably when his production's rocketed, he predominantly plays on the edge now. I think it's like a 4-to-1 snap count. They've sorted his position out. He is an edge. But he can come in, like he's done plenty of work on the inside. You can work him on a 3-man front as well, but he's happiest when he's hunting the quarterback. And, you know, that was one of the last really true knocks on him, just sorting out his position. They've done it. And again, you look at his productivity. Maybe you know you'd like a little bit more end product from him. I know his sack count went down a little this year, but that team's been really good. That Louisville team's been really good. And of course, you've got to do your run game stuff as well, which he's also worked on the last couple of years, which has been really good. So you can kind of forgive maybe a tiny downturn in the QB production for it as well, but. No, he's going to be great. I agree. Like the age may be the one thing there, but again, you get him in the right system, and let him go from day one. I don't think he's going to have much of an adjustment period to the NFL. He's got the strength to be able to hang with some of these big nasty tackles, but he's got the agility as well to, let's say, get inside, do some damage. So. Yeah, I quite like him. He's a good player, and if he's one that ends up here, I wouldn't have any issue with that. I think I had him in a mock draft I did the other day. So, yeah, just productive, versatile when you need him, right size, kind of fits the frame we covet. So, yeah, no, every chance he could end up here.
So I really like him as well. So that makes all three of us. Looking at mock draft database, looking at the history of where he's been drafted throughout this process so far, the highest that he's been is at 58. That's the peak. He's currently at the lowest he's ever been. He's 103rd at the moment in the consensus of the everything they take into account, which is more than I take into account on my overall board. But that's especially low. So, you know, at the moment, he could potentially be in play at 101 or whatever it is that we have with our comp pick. So, you know, we might not even have to go and get him at 60. And I just love the versatility that he could have in our scheme of someone who's going to come in and just be a reliable guy to do a job. I mean, the fact that he's got a bit of polish to him, that he wins in multiple different ways. I can live with him maybe not quite being the twitchiest player in the world, or that he's not got that elite get off the ball. The fact that he's a polished edge rusher who is productive, I think actually reads the game pretty well. Sometimes, like you say, you get faked out by a kind of zone read or something like that. But a lot of the time, when you get the zone read stuff, I've kind of noticed that he kind of steps back and just waits for it to happen, watches who takes the ball, and then explodes to the ball. Instead of being so close to it that you get beaten out by it, that he kind of has figured out a way to play that very, very well. So I like that a lot. There's multiple instances on tape in some of his highlight reels, admittedly, which is all I've seen of him really, where he's just very patient against those snaps that we're really bad at. You know, that zone read stuff where you've got to take one or the other, especially with the Russian quarterbacks, we're not good at. And he's got the speed initially when he's waiting for all that to occur, where he can cut those sorts of things off. So if we can get him at 101, yeah, that's a massive value pick, I think. I'd be delighted if we got him. All right, it is time for me to take up the mantle with my next one, which will be, and can one of you correct me on the pronunciation, it's Princely Umanmielen.
God, you got it right.
Come on! Right, that's it. That's Princely. That's all I wanted to do. Is get that right. So Princely, he is a red shirt senior, so he is one of the well, he's not even that old somehow for being a red shirt senior. He's only coming into age 23 in April. He'll be 23 about a week before the draft. So considering he's been around for 5 seasons, that's particularly impressive. He transferred to Ole Miss in this current year. He was a 4-year player at Florida beforehand. Redshirted his first year, only playing 69 snaps. And then he's kind of had more snaps every single year at Florida before transferring and having a breakout year this year in an Ole Miss team that did very well. He's 6'4", 260 pounds, PFF grade this year of 91.1. His next best grade was in 2022 at Florida with an 82.1 overall grade. So this year, run defense of 79, tackling of 71, pressure grade of 91.5. That is because he had 55 pressures this year, including 11 sacks. Missed tackle rate this year of 15.4%, which is pretty good for him, I think. Otherwise, he's a 7-9 technique. He's a stand-up edge rusher, which I think for someone who's 6'4", 260, I would have liked to see him put his hand in the dirt a little bit. He's big enough that I don't think he'd need to be a stand-up edge rusher, but he just is. And I think that maybe does detract a little bit from what he does. But, you know, remains to be seen. Otherwise, sorry, stats. I didn't go into all of the stats. 2024 at Ole Miss, 37 tackles, 10.5 sacks, 14 tackles for a loss, 4 fumble and fumble recovery, which was for a touchdown. So I watched 2 games against Georgia and against Oklahoma. Georgia game, he had a 93.7 grade against one of the tougher teams in the country. And against Oklahoma, it was a 74.9 grade, so a little touchdown, but still above average. Overall, he's an immensely frustrating player because he will have splash plays where you watch him and you think, wow, this kid's the second coming. But the majority of his reps, you're left wanting more. And it's annoying because do you take him because he has those splashes and we can make him more consistent? Or is he just who he shows in the majority of his reps? And is he going to improve as someone who... I mean, he's played about 500 snaps each of the last 3 seasons. He's coming to his age 23 seasons. He's one of the older players in this draft. He's a 260-pound edge rusher. He plays exclusively the 7-9 technique. He doesn't play any 5-tech snaps, pretty much. I find it weird as someone of his weight. And someone at that weight, he's not a great run defender? Why? Like, show me something. Like Mike Green, who... And I'll just say, Mike Green legitimately played at around 240. I think he looked light as shit. And Princely played at 260. I think he actually looked bigger than that. I think he might have been playing at like in a 265-ish. When you got 25 pounds on someone, you shouldn't be that much worse than someone against the run. But he was. He has electric explosion off the ball when he wants to. But it's 1 in every 5 or 6 reps. Why are you not giving me 100% more? I'm not saying you have to every rep. It's not realistic. You know, you've got to pick and choose your moments. But they're too few and far between. And I hate it. It really annoys me. He has 2 excellent moves, but only 2 excellent moves. And he has no other pass rushing chops whatsoever. He has a speed rush around the outside shoulder of the offensive tackle. That's his main move. He has great speed, he can dip under the shoulder, he can turn the corner really well, and he carries a lot of speed, which means he's on a quarterback very quickly when he wins. So his pressure to sack rate is very good, 20%, which, I think is a marker we should be really looking at. A pressure to sack rate of 20% is very, very good. And I think Ash mentioned that about his first guy as well. When he goes past offensive tackles in that speed rush moment, those tackles often will be just punching at thin air. It's not that he's swiped it away. He's beaten them. Like, he's there before the punch has happened. And when tackles do manage to place that punch on him, he loses the rep. Just outright loses the rep. And it's very frustrating. The other move he has, apart from a speed rush on the outside, is an inside spin. From the right-hand side. So a clockwise spin, which is obviously from the opposite side of what Hutch does. But Hutch can spin both ways. I don't think he can. He can use that as a primary move or out of a counter of bull rush. He tries to bull rush. He's not particularly good at it, but he does spin as a counter out of that, and that's moderately effective. His bull rush is ineffective at college level. I don't expect it to be particularly good at the NFL level. While his speed's really good and his speed rush works, and it works again and again and again at the college level, I worry that NFL tackles are going to be able to anticipate that that's what he does. Get the punch in. And now what are you doing? And now what do you have? Like, he's an eminently predictable player. His pad level's poor. He plays too upright. Unless he has decided to go for speed rush and he's going to dip under the shoulder, he doesn't play with leverage. Now, this isn't to say he's a lazy player necessarily. He shows really good effort. He doesn't give up on reps. He keeps those legs churning. He works to the backside to try and cut things off. If he's unblocked, he will pursue running backs and will be able to take them down from behind because he does have that speed. But there's no hand fighting. There's no other moves. He's a redshirt senior. I don't particularly like his upside, but if that speed rush works, he's going to be a success in the NFL, but I think it's a massive if. And you have a look at where he was regarded in this process. Some people loved him in the first round for a long time. And he's kind of slipped and slipped. I have him as a top of the third round guy. And I think that's maybe a bit lower than still where he is on consensus right now. I think that people still think reputationally he's a bit higher than that. I wouldn't be surprised to see him fall out of day 2 altogether. I think that his stock is just dipping and dipping as players who've gone a bit more under the radar kind of jump him. So I'd be shocked if any of the guys that we've mentioned so far go before him. Even Gillotte, I think, will go before him. I think Gillotte's got more to his game. I think he's a more polished edge rusher. So we shall see. Anyway, I've talked for long enough about Princely, and I know that we spoke about Princely. I know that you have a take on him as well.
It's kind of, I mean, to be fair, Ryan would be the one to ask this because he's the Ole Miss guy, and he'll have watched a lot. But over the years, and if you ask any Florida Gators fan, they will probably give you the same thing about him: is he is very flashy and he's a game changer on his day, but he's like a version of a false nine over here in football. The guys who are so technically gifted and, you can get everything you want out of them and on the day they'll do whatever you need them to. But then when it comes to the backs to the wall performance, you need them on defense, etc. It's they can be found lacking. And they might not be willing to put everything towards the cause. And, when you're in the Alamo, you want guys who are going to dig down and do deep, and that's his problem. The strength is an issue, and he needs to get better at that. When he comes to the NFL, there are teams who are going to run the ball. They're going to keep running the ball down your throat until you give them a reason not to. And when you put him in that sort of situation, he's going to struggle. When you take away his wings been put him in 3rd and longs and that, and getting into good situations for him to go rush the passer. You clip those. I'm not sure that he's got the ability to just get out and make his own opportunities in that degree. And that's what you're going to have to deal with. You'll use him as a situational pass rusher when you bring him in. And if you're spending a round 1, high round 2 pick on it, you're kind of okay, that's fine, but you'll need to get the run out of him eventually, and it's whether he can or not. And you look at the production this year, and the production's been the best year he's had. But I mean, look at that Old Miss defensive line. Walter Nolan is going in the first round. Jaden Ivey, not Jaden Ivey, but Ivy, the other edge, is going to get drafted probably on day 2. JJ Pegues is going to get drafted maybe on day 2, maybe day 3. That entire defensive line is getting drafted this year. And again, is he going to do well when he's got a lot more attention on? Because you can't, a lot of teams have had to leave him one-on-one this year. They've had to, it's played into his wheelhouse. Is he going to be able to do it in there? If he gets landed on a team where he's the star edge from day 1 and everybody's looking at him and everybody's, focused on him, I think he's going to struggle. So I don't think he's the type of player that we would covet. I mean, if we did, as a pass rusher, I would be immensely excited, but it's going to take a while for him to get to where what we would need him to be. So, yeah, he's a bit infuriating, and he'll have a lot of admirers from college, but a lot of the people who will say something negative about him will mention that he sometimes takes plays off, sometimes not quite there when you want him. So, yeah.
Ash, have you seen him at all?
Yeah, for reasons we'll get on to in a bit, but the bits I've seen of him, I agree. Is obviously I saw him at Florida, considering the team I support in college, so I've seen him at least once a year. But watching one of my other guys that we'll get on to later, I saw him obviously on the opposite side. And yeah, just flashy guy, can definitely make the flash plays, but other than that, it's not net. There's not enough sort of net neutrals for me. It's either you've got plus plays or you've got negative plays. There's no in between, and that's not a top 3 rounds player for me at all. That is a day 3 guy. You bet on the upside. You bet on your coaching. You can get some more out of him. So, yeah, for me, avoid until day 3, which sucks because, coming into this year, he had a lot of buzz about him. He's one of the big guys. Kind of have a similar form. This is going to bring some flashbacks to people. Do you remember when we were getting mock Julian Okwara at pick 10 in his draft class, the start of that year? That's the kind of vibes you're getting from Princeton here. He's just very, very high pedigree. Not really worked out for him.
What a name to pick out there. That's harsh. Even I think that's harsh.
He just came to us sitting as hang on, big name things who coming into the college season really big and then just never lived up to it. Oh, Junior Crowell when we're getting him mocked at 10 after Romeo's 10 sack season. That's the perfect example.
Fair. All right. And it is time to go back to you for your second guy.
So kind of going on some themes here. Ash had maybe a bit of a disrespected ACC guy, and I also have a bit of a disrespected ACC guy given his production over the years. And there's a guy, this goes back to last year with him, but Elijah Roberts out of SMU. He's 6'4", 285, so not dissimilar a build to what Ashton Gillotte is as well. Former high 4-star recruit, went to Miami initially, his home cities where he wanted to play. Didn't work for the first 3 years for him, only saw rotational reps there, never was able to break into the team. So took a chance, went down to SMU their last year in the American before they came up to the Power 4. So he was coming to a program that was coming back to the big leagues anyhow. And it's probably the best move he'll ever make in his life. He has been incredibly productive over these last 2 years. So he leaves college with 146 quarterback pressures, 131 of those have been the last 2 years, 21 sacks, 18 hits, nearly 100 QB hurries on there. There's 3 bad passes in there, 4 forced fumbles, 50 tackles, solo, 20 assisted, missed tackle rates at 17%, so a little on the high side. But again, these guys, you can sometimes forgive for that there. But yeah, when it comes to Elijah Roberts, this is a guy who production-wise, last year he was absolutely outstanding. 13 sacks last year. Come up to the Power 4 this year. It's his first real time of getting starting experience there. He's had another 8, and he works in a system, again, like Ezeiruaku is. Scott Simons, who runs the defense there at SMU, he's incredibly aggressive when it comes to his defense, but he's quite tactically aggressive, I put this, and he gets his defensive linemen to do a lot. So he's been sort of a tweener as well, like Gillotte. I mean, these guys have a little bit of, not as much. He plays predominantly on the edge, but because of his 285-pound size, they do play him in the 3-man front, sort of in towards the 4-eye there, and he's a very intriguing prospect because, you know, given the size, the 280, people say, you know, he struggles with the speed rush off the edge, which sometimes he does a little bit, but he is brutish, he is strong, he's got a whole arsenal of pass rush moves in there and counters when it comes to the run game. I love what he does in the run game because, to say, he's a big man. He can take on double teams. They can't move him off his positions. I remember the TCU game they played this year, when they absolutely leathered them in what is one of the most hated rivalries going. And he was a stout block stone all day. And they were putting a tight end and the left tackle on him, trying to shift him out of position in the run game. They couldn't do so. So when it comes to his run defense, it's really good. And he is stout, he is strong, doesn't need to move. And again, he's got a high motor for a big guy. A lot of examples of him sort of, you know, pressure him from behind. If guys get behind, he's got a high motor. He will recover. You will see the recovery tackles if he can't get it initially, and his pass rush is really intriguing as well. He bases it on his strength. Obviously, he will force guys backwards, you know, sort of get them on the back foot, and then you'll see him deploy the moves to really cut loose from them and get through to the quarterback. Yes, it's nowhere near Umanmielen speed, guys like that, but the repertoire he has at his disposal, again, is vast, and the productivity is there as well. As I say, it's really impressive about it. It has stunted his development a bit because with what they do with these guys, they will bring him inside to blitz the A gaps. They will rush him around the outside. Like, they try and create these tactical matchups where they can get, and it's been very successful for the most part, but it asks a lot of these guys. So you can see in some areas where he's not quite fully developed yet because he gets so much asked of him, and it's hard to settle into a routine, like just playing off the edge and hitting the edge all the time. You say he has to come inside. He's asked to do a lot, and they do drop him into coverage sometimes as well. But for all these guys who say that he is a little bit underdeveloped in some of his areas, the productivity is still there. And year on year, he's got better. Yes, it's just the 2 years as a starter, but he's done it at Group of 5. He's done it at Power 4. And there's one play that really sort of epitomized me for him and what he's all about. And again, this was the SMU TCU game. It was the interception return. It was a 60-yard or something like that. And initially off the block, he bull rushes into double team. It's the right guard and the center, puts him all the way back into the quarterback. Quarterback makes an errant throw downfield. It's picked off by one of the linebackers who runs it back 60 yards. But the throws from the 40-yard line, he's double teamed a pair of guys and he's on the ground with them. When the linebacker takes it all the way back downfield, who's the guy who's furthest down the field blocking for him to get there? It's Elijah Roberts, a 285-pound defensive end who's got up, absolutely legged it 40 yards, and as he's going into the end zone, he's pancaking the last man so that the guy can take it in for the pick six. This is high energy, high octane stuff from him. He doesn't stop. And he's just a buzzsaw who you let go, and he just creates all sorts of havoc on this defensive line, which is, I really appreciate effort like that. And again, in such a big day against such a hated rival, you know, he just left nothing on the field whatsoever. He was absolutely shafted by the time he was done. He had a forced fumble on the day, which he used from destroying the right tackle, a couple of sacks in there as well, helping on that, you know. So, yeah, for me, Elijah Robson is one of those guys. He's been in that sort of tween area. You want to find maybe a permanent position from the next level. I think it's on the edge. You don't rely on him as a speed rusher. You probably use him more as a big end type who does really well against the run and will get you plenty of sacks in the season as well. I certainly think there's a future there for him. I say he's great against the run, good at getting to the passer, and he's just very underappreciated for what he does. And he's still a lot of room for growth. 2 years as a starter, and you know, I think he's only just beginning to tap his potential. maybe make him lose 10 off there. You're still at 275. You've just got that little extra step there to help you get to the quarterback a bit more. I mean, I don't see why people are so down on him. The last time looking, he falls down near to the hundreds and that as well. And this is for a productive, quality player, in my view. This SMU line has been fierce, and what they ask him to do, he will be a joy for a defensive coordinator at the next level. They're not just getting some big lug on the outside who's against the run. He's very versatile in what you can do with him. So again, Elijah Roberts is another I've liked for a while now, and I hope he does well, whether it's with us. Maybe no, certainly you would get him with one of your second two picks in there if you don't want to go with it right away. But I think there's a lot to work there with him. I think he'd fit our system quite well. So that's Elijah Roberts. I'm looking forward to seeing how he does. But I think he'll be a success at the next level for sure.
Have you seen any of him at all?
Again, unfortunately so. I saw him week 5 this year when he played my team, and he got 5 pressures and had a pretty good day. Not as good as obviously the 2 games before, the aforementioned TCU game, and then week 2 against BYU, where he had back-to-back 90+ grades from PFF. But 5 pressures, he had 3 run stops, just a damn all right game from him. He mostly played over our right tackle, who was an absolute turnstile last year, and he made him look like that. I think the issue with him is because he is that sort of 280 to 285 to 295 range. People don't know where to put him because SMU had the same issue moving all around. People don't know where to put him, so currently Mock Draft Database has him in the IDL, and that pushes him down because, again, he's that flexible piece that, we would absolutely love. He's kind of the opposite of Levi Meki-Wingo and so much that he's a defensive tackle that you can move out to defensive end. To some people, some people just don't like that. So that's why he's currently their 208 ranks prospect. His highest rank was 253rd. People just don't know what to do with him. But if we managed to get him on day 3 as a sort of second option at defensive tackle or edge after going there earlier, I'd be very happy because, I know he's a former Hurricane and I'm supposed to hate those kind of players, kind of like I do with Princely. Productive at Group of 5 level, productive at the Power 5 level. Like this past year, against us, 5 pressures. Against Louisville, 6 pressures. Stanford, 7 pressures. Duke, 6 pressures. Virginia, 10 pressures. Penn State, 6. Clemson, 6. Those aren't some mugs that he's going up against, especially Penn State and Clemson. Those are some really good offensive lines there. And he got multiple pressures against them. I'll be very happy if we get him.
I've been watching some tape on him while you guys have been talking, and the way that he can win in multiple different ways is really impressive. And I think, to Ant's point about being asked a lot, going inside, blitzing the A-gap, going outside, trying to beat a tackle. Ant was saying, he's not been able to set into a role and kind of develop his skills at one position. But what he's lost in not being able to develop one particular skill has meant, I think, that he's actually become quite well-rounded. He's not a liability against the run. He's not a liability against the pass. He's going to provide you a lot against multiple different types of players. If you've got a technician of a tackle out there, or you've got a heavy tackle out there, he's going to be able to find a way to beat either of them. He can beat a tackle or a guard or a centre inside or outside because he's got the hand fighting technique. He's got an incredible ball rush. Really, really impressive. And the other last bit I was about to say is just what Ash says. If you have a look at where his best games are this season, they're against the better teams he's played. That's really impressive. And that is something that wasn't there in 2023. In 2023, yes, it was Group of 5, which we don't want to say are bad too much. But he had his best games against the worst teams in his lineup in 2023. In 2024, he had his best games against the best teams. So that's been the biggest jump for him. The grade will say he had a very similar season, but they don't give higher weighting to the harder teams he played. If they did, this would have been viewed as a much better season. And him being in the 200s is ridiculous. He'll be a big riser through the process, I would expect. If he went as one of the earliest picks on day 3 in round 4. That really wouldn't surprise me. Maybe he can threaten the bottom of day 2. I don't know. Maybe in the comp pick territory. Maybe at 101 he can be a thing for us. I don't know. But I colour me very impressed. He's now my watch list to see a lot more. Okay. That was Elijah Roberts out of SMU. And Ash, we're coming back to you for your third guy.
Yeah, I'm unfortunately about to perhaps bring the mood down with a guy who isn't really living up to his billing for me, and that is Jah Joyner, the Minnesota Edge. Went to the Senior Bowl, so we've got a bit of percentile stuff on him, and we've got more accurate weighing from him. So he measured in at the Senior Bowl at 6'4", which is 70th percentile, and 263 pounds, which is 59th percentile per RAS. The only one that was on RAS, so that's why I have them. This past year, 76.7 overall grade, 75.4 run defense, 70.1 tackle, 75.4 pass rush, 62.2 coverage, 64.8 special teams, 31 pressures, 3 sacks, 6 hits, and 22 hurries, 3 batted passes, 25 tackles, 11 of which were assisted, 10.7 missed tackle rate, 14 run stops, 2 forced fumbles, and then 1 target for no catches and 3 penalties. On special teams, no special teams tackles or penalties. Played 521 snaps this past season, most of which, again, were at the 5 tech, but he took snaps from the 2 wide to the 9. Also had 1 snap at slot corner against UNC in week 1, which is kind of funny, and then 32 snaps on special teams. So I watched his games against Maryland and Penn State this year. Maryland game, 80.8 overall grade, 70.4 run defense, 75.4 tackle, 77.4 pass rush, and 60 coverage, where we had 3 tackles, all of which were assisted, 3 pressures, 2 hits in a hurry, and a batted pass. And then against Penn State, 68.9 overall, 57.6 run defense, 73.8 tackling, 74.2 pass rush, 2 tackles, 1 of which was assisted, 4 pressures, all of which were hurries, and then a run stop. So strengths, as you can tell from where he's been used, he can rush from a 2 and a 3-point stance. He absolutely loves the spin move, so he'll be fitting right alongside Hutch. He used it in both games, his prime is rush move, though he did fall over doing it as his secondary move versus Maryland, though. He just got absolutely pushed over, which is kind of funny. But he does have other moves he can use, such as a swipe, a swim, a hand flash move, and a dip. And he especially uses the dip against guards when he's lined up on the inside. He also does have a speed rush and can bend around the tackle, and he won against both teams doing this. And he does convert speed to power occasionally. He does it twice against Maryland, including a rep on the 3rd and long, where he forces the right tackle back into the QB, and then the QB literally threw the pass off the back of the right tackle's helmet, which again was funny to watch. And he was used on stunts against Maryland, both inside out, so from the right hand 2-eye technique to the left hand 9 technique, and then outside in doing so left hand 9 technique to the 2-eye on the left hand side as well. And if he doesn't get to the QB, he does the right thing. He gets his hand up into throwing lanes, which got him a batted pass against Maryland. And he has some very good play recognition. He read a screenplay on the first play against Maryland and tackled the running back for a 2-yard gain, I believe it was. And he has some good coverage ability, that screenplay. And then later on in the same game, he stays with that back in the flat, but the throw went elsewhere because the back was the obvious check down option, wasn't the first read. And that play recognition and coverage ability also shows his athleticism. So he's able to stick with some QBs out of the pocket. So he forces a throwaway versus Maryland by tracking that QB outside of the pocket on the scramble drill. Just keeps him going towards the sideline, not letting him get forward, and eventually the QB had to throw it away. And on stunts for blitzes, he's able to occupy offensive linemen by picking up double teams. So against Penn State, there's a blitz where he occupies both the right guard and right tackle for the linebacker to blitz around the outside shoulder of the right tackle to get to the QB. And he's got a good motor to him. He always tries to stay in the play where possible, including getting a assisted tackle versus Maryland after losing the rep to the left tackle initially. But, and this is where the stuff really comes in for him, the age is a factor with him. He is 24, and I believe because of when he was born, he will be 25 entering the season. That's not good. And for someone who's played a lot of football, some of the technique just isn't there. So there's pathetic arm tackle attempts, one versus the Penn State, where he beat the left tackle, and all he has to do is wrap up the running back, and you got him for a loss. Just to protect his arm tackle attempt, and Nick Singleton goes for 20 yards. And despite his good play rec, he just overcommits his rush like quite a lot, both against the run and the pass. So there's quite a few times where he's rushing against the tackle, just overcommits. It opens up a lane up the C gap for the QB to scramble to get some positive yardage. Same goes for the run game. And he just lacks some functional strength at times. So he's consistently driven out the play by offensive linemen to open up more rushing lanes for the backs and QBs, as well as just being swallowed up by double teams. So my comparison for him, and I hate ragging on the guy again, a lighter, more athletic Josh Pascal, where you've got a higher motor, you're always trying, but you just rarely make the kind of plays you're looking for. Like, you're rarely making those impact plays. Like, you can do stuff on all three downs. You can defend against the run. You can pass rush. But he's just not someone you want to rely on to start if you can help it. He's definitely got a place as a rotational piece, as a special teamer, kind of like Anthony Pittman and our linebacker crew, where you put him on all phases of special teams, he'll do a job for you. But you really don't want to rely on him to take more than 5-10 snaps a game for you on defense. Like, some other comparisons for him, more recent ones that aren't Lions. So Cameron Good, who is an outside linebacker for the Miami Dolphins, and O'Shawn Mathis, who was picked by the Rams. You've got athleticism there that just wasn't fully put together at the college level, and you probably won't get much from out the pros because of their age. Best use is a rotational piece, special teams usage. So he's currently ranked as the 30th defensive end on our consensus board, the 253rd prospect overall, which puts him at that borderline bottom of the 7th borderline prior to UDFA territory. I'd have him a tiny bit higher than that because the kind of guys you get in that range, at least you can, if you need to stick him in for 5 reps, because I don't know, Jet Rush has gone down, you just need to quickly come up with a new plan in the middle of a drive. He can do that for you as a sort of rush end or free for outside linebacker. But because he's a redshirt senior, because he's that old, and just because he has still quite a lot of issues with him, there's not a lot of developmental upside for him there. So for us, he's a kind of, okay, we've got an edge really high up earlier. We're just looking for another guy just to fill out the bottom of the roster as a special teamer, as a guy you can count on, as maybe a rotational guy, just in case shit really does hit the fan. But considering Swebb's seen him go in some mock drafts in like sort of 5th, 6th, I'm just not there at all. Unfortunately, he's very much a solid middle to bottom of the 7th round prospect for me. So hopefully we don't pick him, because then I'll have to clip this up and make a fool of myself. But Jah Joyner, I hope you get a good place elsewhere.
And have you seen Jah Joyner at all?
Watched a fair bit of that Minnesota. I've always been more of a Danny Strigo fan. He's the other end coming out of Minnesota. But I don't really know enough about him to pass any more comment than Ash has done.
Fair enough. I've watched a little bit of him. He's someone that you can take a flyer on, but I don't think there's anything more to him than that. There's some moves in there, but I thought he's got a good ball rush. And, you know, he can drive people back and he can use leverage, and he's got a bit of a speed rush, and he does have a few pass rush moves, but I don't see anything remarkable about him on a down-to-down basis. You know, there are good reps, but that's not enough to do it for me. He hasn't broken out in any sort of way like some of the other guys we've talked about in this have, and he does lose reps, and, you know, he has beaten up on worse teams, and he's been bad against some of his better opponents, and that doesn't bode well when you take a step up. So I have my doubts about Jah. But yeah. Oh, I'm going to be speaking next, aren't I, about a guy? I should get ready for that. Oops. Give me 1 second here. I'm going to hopefully make a few people happy about who I'm going to be talking about. I mean, the things I say about that person may not make you happy, but at least I'll be talking about him. I'm going to be talking about one of Michigan's own, and that is going to be Josaiah Stewart out of Michigan. If I can put all of the notifications up so people can actually know who I'm talking about in the live chat. That would be fantastic. All right. Josaiah Stewart. So, Josaiah Stewart, he is a senior at Michigan. I think he's a true senior. He's 6'1", 245 pounds, 91.2 grade at PFF this year. So, very highly rated season last season. 2-year player at Michigan. He was at Coastal Carolina the 2 years before that. This past year at Michigan, 33 tackles, 22 of which solo, 8.5 sacks, 13 tackles for a loss, and 2 forced fumbles. Positionally, in college, he's a defensive end. But I think that given his height and his length, I think he's probably going to project to be either a 3-4 outside linebacker, blitzing outside linebacker, or a 4-3 Sam. I don't see him living at all at the edge in the NFL. I watched 2 games of his against USC, which was a PFF grade of 93.8 after getting 2 sacks and an additional tackle for loss and a forced fumble in that game. And then against Texas, where he had a 76 grade, with 4 tackles and half a tackle for a loss. But on him generally, statistically in the season, 37 pressures, converted that to 9 sacks. That's better than 20% pressure to sack ratio. 18.2% missed tackle rate, which is a bit higher than some of these guys that we've been talking about before. Just to highlight how much he was playing on the edge and how much he wasn't playing at linebacker. He played 440 snaps this year, so I mean much lower than some of these starting guys that we've been looking at. He's a starter, but he's a bit more of a situational, rotational player given how good Michigan are generally compared to some of these other guys. Out of all of those snaps, what was it? 440. 426 were on the defensive line, only 14 were elsewhere. And out of those 426, 422 were at the 7-9 technique. So he is very much someone who played defensive end at college, and yet he's not, for me, projected to play that position in the NFL. So that's a bit of a concern. But looking at how he played in these games, he's a short and stout edge defender. He can drop into coverage a bit. So actually, even though he's a 4-3 edge player in college, they did have him drop into coverage a fair bit. Of his 440 reps, 53 were as a coverage player, so about 12%. So it's something from that position that they made him do a little bit. So maybe my concerns about him having to transition to that sort of position where he does need to cover a little bit more are slightly unfounded. As a pass rusher, so in 2024, 9 sacks, but his run defense is the thing which actually has improved since he moved on from Coastal Carolina up to Michigan. He took a noticeable step in that regard. He's got impressive twitch off the ball. That's how he wins most often than not. He does try and time the snap with an eagerness which is laudable, but it can get him into trouble. So in some of the games I watched, I think it was against Texas. No, it was against USC, which had the very, very highly rated game. He was actually flagged twice for jumping the snap while he was trying to time it and just try and beat the tackle to it. He was caught offside, which actually gave the offense a free play, which is, maybe you have to dial that back a little bit, but I like the enthusiasm. He lacks any pass rush moves of any kind. He doesn't have any. He has no plan. And that's a real concern. Because he's got twitch. And he's got stoutness against the runs. So, that's a great starting point. But he ball rushes, or he speed rushes. He's not got limited hand fighting ability. He's got no counters. He's got no spins. He doesn't really try a chop or a swim or anything like that in the games that I have seen, at least. I'm sure he's put something on tape. Please, he must have, but I haven't seen it. The twitch that he has is rare. So it's not like he doesn't have a ceiling. If you can build some polish into him, if you can really, try and make a gem of him, he might get there. Even though he's only 6'1", and I don't think he's got the longest arms in the world. If you can develop him with that speed, I think that there is the possibility of him becoming an elite NFL player. But the problem is, that unless you put some polish on him, considering how he's only played 12% of his reps this year in coverage, and how he's going to have to be a bit of a coverage player into the NFL, at least a bit more than he has been doing, and that he's going to be rushing off the edge in a 3-4 if he does rush off the edge, or he's going to be coming as a 4-3 Sam downhill. Maybe it's going to be a bit of a surprise when he does come, but he's going to be blitzing more often than not. And when he's got no pass rushing skills, if you don't put that into his game, I don't see how he's going to win at the next level. So while this might be a guy who potentially has a high ceiling, I think he's got a pretty low floor. Now, he's okay against the run. If he ends up being... Screw it, if he ends up being a stack linebacker, if you put him at Mike or at Will, he might be able to live, maybe, if he can build on that coverage ability. But he hasn't been trialled in that position by Michigan. So you may have to rebuild him altogether as a player in order to have him succeed at that position. So, then there's a place in the NFL for his skill set. There's things he does which are nice. He's played special teams for 3 or 4 of his years at college for, a fair amount. So I can see him being drafted early on day 3 because there's just stuff to like about him and maybe you can develop him, and he'll make a roster because he'll still be able to play reps on special teams. But the bust rate is going to be really high with him. And it's a real shame because he had a good season, but when all you can do is bend around the edge with no consistency and bull rush a bit, but it's not great. And, it's Michigan. Like, they're just so damn good most of the time that, you've got so many people to worry about. No one's focusing on Josaiah Stewart when you've got Mason Graham in there and all the other guys that you've got to deal with on that line. What happens if people actually do pay attention to him is my question. So, interesting player. I really... If someone told me that he was a really good NFL player, I wouldn't be surprised. But if someone said he was out of the league before his rookie contract was up, also wouldn't be surprised at all. Have you guys watched any of Josaiah Stewart at all?
Not particularly. I watched the D tackles inside of him. That's where the money is with these guys. So he's not a David Ajabo or Aiden Hutchinson, let's just put it that way.
That's fair. I haven't seen too much of him, but from what you're saying, he is a slightly more athletic, slightly less refined Trevor Nowaske, which has a role in the NFL, but Nowaske was in the UDFA for a reason. Anthony Pittman was a UDFA for a reason, etc., etc., etc. There's definitely a role for him in the NFL. There's definitely a role for him on this team if we do take him. It's probably as a price to UDFA from the sounds of things.
I mean, so his mock draft consensus rank at the moment is 75th, which puts him about the middle of the 3rd. He has not been outside the top 100 in this cycle, in this year. He's not been drafted in the first round in any mock draft in 2025, apart from once, 10 days ago, in Cynthia Freeland's mock draft, where he went 22 to the LA Chargers, which is all manners of batshit crazy.
Yeah, they got the wrong Michigan player going there. There's only one Michigan player going there at 22, and it's definitely not him.
It was Kenneth Grant, I'm imagining.
Oh, God, yeah. That's the bet of the draft. You can pencil that in right now.
Yeah. So
I was thinking another Michigan player, other side of the ball, though.
No, not Colston
Colston.
Loveland.
Yeah.
From where Colston's going, he might not be there at 15. I don't know. People seem unduly infatuated with the top couple of tight ends this year.
They do. Right, and time for your final guy that we've got in detail.
So my final guy, so last week on the college pod, Ryan compiled a list of the 10 most likely players we thought we were going to end up on the Lions this year. And the risk with doing this so far in advance is there's still a lot of time to go. There's a lot of players to go through, and you look a bit stupid when you come across a guy who you might want to put on this list beforehand. And I'm just going to say now, this is not particularly down due to any of the stuff I've seen, this is a gut feeling. And I've not had this gut feeling since we did our work on Malcolm Rodriguez a few years ago. Tyler Batty, the edge out of BYU, and need to tell a bit of a story here. This is I've done a lot on him. He had a very good Shrine Bowl. It sort of caught our attention a little bit last year as well, and one I've done a lot more on. And yeah, there's just something about him I can't explain, but if there's going to be a day three pick for the Lions, this is going to be the guy. So he's been let's just go through his stats on that first, and we'll go through the story. He's been a 5-year player at BYU, stayed there his entire career. Played about 2,500 snaps for them, 143 quarterback pressures, 19 sacks, 35 quarterback hits, 89 quarterback hurries, nearly 200 tackles, and only a 14% missed tackle rate for him, 117 run stops, couple of forced fumbles in there, and he added a new repertoire to his game this year. He had 2 picks this year, as well as he's been taught how to drop into coverage a little bit, and he's quite a scheme versatile guy in terms of he can go pretty much all the way in. Now, the vast majority of the snaps have come outright off the edge, about 1,700 there, but he's played 500 slightly further interior towards the 5 tech 4-eye position. And he also does play a little bit right on the interior as well, sort of more of your 3 tech. So he is scheme versatile. And again, this comes down to the coordinator there. So Jay Hill, he runs one of the most complex defensive schemes in all of college football. He gets them literally doing everything there. Man, cover 3, zone pressure, plays 2 high safeties, 1 high safety. They even play a drop 8 package, which he is part of as well, hence why the interceptions have gone up this year. But you got to go back to the start of his career there at BYU. So as a freshman, he was nearly killed while he was there as a freshman. He had his family got a ranch. He got involved in a quad bike accident, which landed him in hospital. He had a brain bleed. They thought he was going to die, and somehow, by all miracles, he managed to recover from this. And not only did he recover, but he's gotten back on to the football field, and he's had 3 healthy years as a starter there. 4, sorry, healthy years. He was meant to be a starter from day one. This is the esteem they held him in. And this is coming from a system that's not been very good with its defensive linemen in recent years. There's not been a defensive lineman drafted since Kyrus Tonga in 2021 out of BYU. You have to go back to 2016 for the last edge drafted, and you have to go back to Ziggy Ansah till the last good edge was drafted out of there. And we know all about him, but he's had to go through the move from, they were an independent team when he got there. Obviously, they moved to the Big 12 last year. They've had to adjust. They were a really bad team last year. And this year, they were great. They had the unbeaten run till about 9-0, and then it sort of fell apart at the end. But there is a point to all this. His defensive coordinator this year, when he left, said this about him. He said, BYU football right now would not be as tough as it is or as tenacious as it is without Tyler Batty. He has been the leader of this defense. He's a 2-time team captain, which the Lions do really covet as a thing, but you listen to him talk and you listen to his love for the game of football. He's completely devoted to this game, which is another trait that they look for as well. But as a player, I've listened to podcasts about him. He is completely unselfish. A guy who will go into the trenches every single play. He's a team guy. He's not an individual guy. And people rag him for his lack of production. He's only had 1.5 sacks this year, same as Shamar Turner, who people say is going to go in the first round. But this is a guy, he's great against the run. And you have to be in the Big 12. I did a list of all the running backs he's played against this year. Brashard Smith, DJ Giddens, Bryson Washington, Ollie Gordon, RJ Harvey, Micah Bernard, Devin Neal, Cam Scatterboo. Every single one of them guys is getting drafted, apart from Bryson Washington, who was a 1,000-yard rusher as a freshman. Kind of goes to show you the level of competition in the Big 12. You've got to be a good run defender. He has been his entire career there. He is physical. He is the first guy in. He will lay the hardest hit. He sets the tone. He sets the culture. And BYU is known for its toughness in the trenches, if not for bringing the talent through to the NFL. But I watch him play, and this is a guy who gives 200%. If you're a starter in a team and you take one play off, he'll take your job, like Malcolm Rodriguez did here He will just not stop. He's relentless. As a pass rusher, I actually like what he does. So in terms of his size, he's 6'5", 275. He's another bigger end. I love the frame that fits us perfectly if you want a guy opposite long term for him here. But as a pass rusher, I know the sacks aren't there, but he still had 150 odd pressures in his career. There's a lot of hits there. There's just a lot of, it's just conversion. You just need to convert it at the end, just be that little bit quicker, that little bit more, refined with your technique. But we're talking day three guy here. In terms of his technique is good. The speed just needs to get to the quarterback a little quicker, as I say. But as a run defender, there's no one I'd rather have in those trenches than him and send him in there. He is completely selfless for his team. There was a play at the Shrine Bowl which everyone saw where he chased down. I think it was not Jackson Dart. It was some. Might have been Jackson Dart, actually. Chased him all the way back. He got on a quarterback run from about 30 yards out, dragged him down at the 1 yard line to stop him from scoring. It's Tyler Batty, the nearly 280-pound edge, who chased him down. This is an ultimate team guy. This is an ultimate culture guy who's had to work through some very tough times at BYU to get them to where they are. And they said that the hole he's leaving is going to be unimaginably big. But you're going to see a lot more good prospects coming out of that school because of the trail he's blazed there. In terms of a day three guy, we don't have no development edges in the Lions draft system now James Houston has gone. We've got our starters, we've got our big guys, we've got our depth guys. We don't have no development players. We don't have no special teams guys there. We've got nothing. We've taken no shots at the future of that position here. And I look at this. He screams Dan Campbell, Brad Holmes player. He looks Dan Campbell, Brad Holmes player. He plays like a Dan Campbell, Brad Holmes player. Like I say, team leader, completely selfless. And that's probably been to his detriment. The fact that he's put everyone else above himself on that team, that he's maybe just, he's going to come up to the NFL now and now's his time. It's just, if you're going to be on the same team as him, if you take a playoff, he will take your job. And I can't explain it fully, but I have this tingle feel. I say we got it with Rodrigo when you saw him. He's undersized. People never thought he was going to make it, but he just had this desire that nobody else had. And you've seen how it's benefited him in the NFL. There is a position for Tyler Batty in the NFL. Might take a little bit of time. He will do every single special teams rep you ask of him. He will do every dirty job you ask of him. He will do whatever it takes to succeed at this next level. Yeah, I can't explain it, but he fits us to a T more so than any other player that I've mentioned on here, even the big name guys who fit us. I would absolutely love to have him here as a guy day three for us to sit and develop because he's just what this team completely embodies. And everyone who said anything about him at BYU he has created the culture there and he has raised the standards and led the standards. Yeah, I can't say much more about him. He's really underappreciated. You probably get him in round 6, 7, and people will look stupid for passing on him so long. I really, really, really like this guy.
Have you seen any of him, Ash? I haven't, I must confess.
I've seen a bit of him against ASU because one, I wanted to watch a bit of Cam Scatterby just to cheer myself up, but also because he is someone that I very much like as a later pick in the draft. Like, hits between usually when I'm sitting there at the gym doing my Pro Football Network ones because I'm trying to climb up those leaderboards. Now they've got the leaderboards on them. He's someone I very much watch and pick if he's there. So I absolutely love him. And yeah, between him and Joyner, who's also in that similar range, it seems, on mocks, I'll happily take Tyler instead because, yeah, you're getting a lot more for your buck there. Damn good run defender. And he's got the pass rush upside as well that didn't really have the chance to be used, kind of like with Elijah Roberts. So it's something that can be unlocked by Casey Rogers, someone who's done it with Logan Hall before, done it with other guys. It's the kind of guy who will love.
I must admit, I haven't seen any of him apart from the little bit I just watched. Man, the guy can lay a hit down. Oh my god. So I've been watching highlight reels of the guys I haven't watched when you guys have been speaking about your guys. When you've watched highlight reels, a lot of these guys, it's, there's a speed rush and he's hit a quarterback. This guy, it's the running back's coming downhill and he's near damn taking his head off. That's his highlight reel. And I think that Dan Campbell's going to look at that and go, I like him, man.
Yeah.
It's just, when you say tingly feeling about watching him and thinking he fits us, I get it instantly. Like, gritty, hard-nosed, sort of get to work, sort of salt of the earth, blue-collar guy. Like it.
It's the love of the game. Like, they're literally there that like you should really not play football again. He said, I didn't even consider it for 1 second. That's what I want to do. And that's what he did. And to come back from so serious an injury and just play all this time, like you get a feeling. And he is that feeling. I reckon they might even go a little bit higher for I don't know, depends on what he does. He's at the combine. I don't know what his combine numbers will be, but I mean, dude, the guy can run. I don't think he's going to have any problem with it. That is now my standard answer. If anyone says who is the Dan Campbell guy in this draft, I don't think I'll find anyone closer.
Yeah, I see it. All right, time for your last one, Ash. And you've gone for someone opposite someone I went for.
Yep, I've gone for the other Ole Miss edge in Jared Ivey. Admittedly, this one will be a little less comprehensive than the others because I've only watched him when I got back from the gym. So I've seen like 1.5 games of him. And that was against Georgia this year, though I did watch a tiny bit of Florida, but as I come on to, I turned it off. So Ivy is 6'6", 285. He this year he got a 90.6 overall grade from PFF, 82.7 run defense, 82.9 tackle, 90.8 pass rush, 57.7 coverage, 65.5 special teams. He had 40 pressures, 8 of which were sacks. So that's a 20% pressure to sack rate, 1 QB hit, and 31 hurries. He also had 30 tackles, none of which were assisted, and 9.1 missed tackle rate. And he had 21 run stops, 2 forced fumbles, and 1 penalty. I also had 0 special teams sacks and 0 special teams penalties. Played 541 snaps on defense, most of which were again for the 5 tech outwards. But he also took snaps from the 0 tech, 1 snap, to 9 tech. He also had 3 snaps off ball linebacker, 1 each in weeks 5, 9, and 13. And he played 117 snaps on special teams. So the Georgia game I watched, he had a 91.4 PFF grade, 73.9 run defense, 77.3 tackle, 91.1 pass rush, and 60.7 coverage. He had 4 pressures, 2 sacks, and 2 hurries, 4 tackles, 2 of which were assisted, 2 run stops, and a forced fumble. And against Florida, he had a 63.4 overall grade, 66.6 run defense, 75.4 tackle, 64.2 pass rush, and 55.5 coverage. He had 2 hurries, 3 tackles, 1 of which was assisted. He can rush from both outside and in, as you said. He's been gone from everywhere from the 0 to the 9 and playing some off ball. But he's arguably best playing that sort of inside shoulder with a tackle inwards, where he can shoot the B and C gaps with his incredible speed to power. He really does flash at times. There's some absolutely great plays to the forced fumble against Georgia, for instance. But he's also just very consistent. You don't really get many of those negative plays. It's either a net neutral or a positive with him. And he can really convert that speed to power really very well when he shoots those gaps. Like there was 1 sack against Georgia where he just absolutely flattens Carson Beck. It was really fun to see. And he has a good play recognition and a good motor. He never stops grinding, which means he's always by the ball. Even if it's a net neutral, he's still trying to force the play to open up things for other people on his line. His weaknesses are that he's a bit old. He's 23. So again, the age is going against him here. And he can go anonymous in games. So I mentioned I watched a bit of the Florida game. The reason it's only a bit is because I literally just couldn't spot him. Like, I know the Blabber was pointing to him at caddies. He was doing nothing. So it's like, it's not fair to him to watch a game where he's literally going anonymous. Let's go and watch something where I can actually get some notes on him. So I turned off the Florida game after like half the first quarter, which isn't too good. Like, when you're flashing against a really big team at Georgia, but then you're playing down to your opposition away, because let's be honest, Florida, while they were better than FSU this year, still weren't a great team. So for him to sort of go anonymous against them wasn't too good it was a bit of a red flag. And he can rely too much on his power at times. If he doesn't beat the tackle with that initial move, he doesn't have many counters. so he can just get locked up at times. So a comparison for him is someone I just mentioned a couple of minutes ago with Logan Hall, a big athletic, big end who can fit both even and odd schemes. Never really did much in college, but under the right coaching, nudge, nudge, wink, wink, Casey Rogers, nudge, nudge, wink, wink, can become a really good rotational piece on the defensive line, both as a 3-4 DE and also as a 4-3 big end. He's currently on the 19th ranked defensive end on our consensus board and the 103rd overall prospect. I'd have him quite a bit higher than that. So I have him as a late round 2 to early round 3 player. Again, if we go elsewhere for first, and he's available at 60, he's on that list that I'll consider just because he can plug and play like that. Pascal, let's be honest, he does a job. If we can upgrade to him, or at least get someone who offers very similar production, but again on a new rookie contract, so when Pascal's ends at the end of this year, we aren't forced to re-sign him because we don't have many options there. That's the Jared Ivey is that kind of guy, consistent guy against run, pass, can do everything you need him to do, and also can slide him inside and passing downs if you want him to. But arguably, that's what I do on our like the obvious third downs is move him inside next to Aleem and then bring on another speed rusher like an Ukwu or a Gude or Nate Lynn if we bring him back, or if we draft another edge later on who is more that speed element, someone like that. He's kind of out the two edges. Obviously, watch a bit of Princely. Now we've watched him. He's the guy I think will fit us a lot more. Probably won't have the big splash plays. It's kind of like to really, but if we increase their talents, Princely is the Kayvon Thibodeau. Jared Ivory is the Aiden Hutchinson. We know which one the team would pick.
And I presume you've seen a little bit of Jared Ivey.
Yeah, I like him more than Princely. Princely has the athletic attributes, but one, he did it the hard way and came from a small school first and earned his right to get up to Ole Miss. And two, since he's been there, his production's been good. Now, again, he's had his best year as a pass rusher this year, but they played him as a pass rusher this year. It's his first year as a true edge rusher. Like last year, they played him at 3-tech as much as they played him at edge. They played him all over. Again, it's very hard to develop yourself when you're getting put all over the line and asked to do a ton of different things. Now they've simplified it this year. You've seen it's great, but he still had the same number. He had 8 sacks last year, the year before last, sorry, when they were moving him all over the show. He's done it again this year. The productivity's not dipped despite him asking to do all this stuff with him. He's 6'6". He's had the problem this year that he's playing high, but he's not been at edge very long, not at least not since his Georgia Tech days. So that is a problem you would expect him to have, especially when he's playing on the interior, when his hand's in the dirt and he's down, and it doesn't really matter as much when you're forcing yourself upwards. When you're playing at high, it's going to take time to adjust, and he's still got 8 sacks out of it. And again, the size, 6'6", 280, you can work with that. I mean, I would keep him out there on the edge as a big end type, or, in situationally you can move him in, but just let him be there, let him develop, and you will probably see a ton more than you've seen from him already. And he still gets nearly double-digit sacks every year, despite being messed around all the time, and despite still being a raw development prospect. Now, this year again with Nolan, Pegues, and Princely, it helps, but still going up against some great talent in the SEC. So I think he's kind of a little bit of a sleeping giant waiting to be had there. Again, you sort out the technique issues and you get him to play a little lower and make his pads a bit less vulnerable. It could be a nightmare at the next level. So, you might need him a year or so just to develop. He'll not go out and kill it from day one, but if there's a role for him day one, and there's certainly a long-term part of your future for him. So if I'm betting on one of them, I'm betting on him because I think he can be that much more in like 3-4 years' time.
I have nothing to add, so I won't bluster. Instead, I'm going to move on to my final guy, and then we're going to have a look at the remainder of the potential first-round edges in brief, because we haven't looked at them in particular. My last guy is the Senior Bowl warrior, Sai'vion Jones, out of LSU. So Sai'vion Jones, he is 6'6", 280, so another big end type. He's a senior. PFF grade this year of 74.9. He's a 5'9" technique defensive end, so that means that he could be a 3-4 defensive end, or he could be a 4-3 edge or defensive tackle. Rushes from a both 2 or 3 point stance, so versatile in that way. Took a big step in 2024 in terms of his pressure production. So 40 tackles this year, 4.5 sacks, 8 tackles for a loss, 2 pass defended, 2 forced fumbles and a fumble recovery, but 43 pressures this year compared to the previous year where he only had 18. That was 33 tackles, 2.5 sacks, 4 tackles for loss. So his production's a little bit lacking, but he converted to having some more pressures in this year in a kind of movement in his game. I watched 2 games against USC and Alabama, both not his best. Not a huge amount to choose from on caddies, unfortunately. He really sticks out on tape as just a huge human being. 6'6", 280. I mean, he was bigger than most of the offensive lines he was going up against. It was insane. He just really pops. Unfortunately, that weight and that height is not his friend. And he had a really big Senior Bowl. So this is the really interesting thing about his evaluation. In the 2 games that I watched, he was slow off the ball. He was consistently the last player off the line. Some of the guys on the LSU line were off the ball 0.2 of a second faster than he was. I mean, it was notable how, like, it was almost in his stance while other people were already fighting. So it's not ideal. Struggles to get off blocks. You know, he can really get locked up by tackles and by interior guys when he was playing on the interior. When he does get off the ball, he's got really good explosion. So if he can time things up a little bit more, he does have a bit of a weapon to him with speed. It's just his reaction time is not quite there, which is unfortunate. He does have a ball rush. He can put that weight to good use. You know, when I look at him sometimes, I almost think I'm looking at Jihaad Campbell. Sometimes. But, like, rarely. You know, I invoke that name only to say what his upside could be, but he's nowhere close, really. He's a subpar edge rusher. He's an average run defender. He doesn't have particularly many pass rush moves. For someone of his size, he shouldn't be as fast as he is. So, you know, there's that to hang his hat on because he's 280 and because he can be quite quick. There's something to like about him. I don't mean to do him down and say he's not good because he could be. He struggles to rush with urgency, and I don't really know how to quantify urgency, but sometimes it just looks like he's waiting for something to happen, and it doesn't. Like, what are you waiting for? Just go and get him. And I don't know whether it's... Sometimes he's obviously trying to 2-gap, and that's fine, but sometimes it requires a little bit more aggression than he's putting on tape, and he just needs to get upfield, and he's not doing that. Because he's okay against the run, and he's an okay pass rusher. Like I said, 43 pressures this year compared to 18 in the previous year. So, given that he's scheme versatile, I do think his draft has a flaw. I do think that he's going to be a guy that goes early mid-day 3, because this ain't a no-hoper by any stretch. Like, there's a lot to like about him, and if you can polish him, there's going to be something that you can do with there. But I think that I don't know a lot of players like him in the NFL that have succeeded. No one comes to mind as a good comp of someone who has his height and weight, his production at the moment, who've gone on to big things. And maybe that's just me with my history of this game not being particularly good. But the thing to say about him is that he was maybe one of the biggest winners at the Senior Bowl, especially in the game itself. He was utterly unblockable. He was creating pressures on almost every play. He had a really lovely swim move against a defensive tackle, which got him a sack. He was a menace, and it was so different to what he'd put on his college tape that I kind of don't know what to make of him, because I've always been a person that preaches your most recent tape is who you are right now. His most recent tape is the Senior Bowl, which is the best thing he's put on tape. And his 2024 season was by far his best season in terms of creating pass rush. So it's an evaluation I struggle with because I didn't really like what I saw with, there being traits of him that I do like. The production wasn't there. And yet, in the Senior Bowl, he really came to life, and people are really talking about him now as a guy who could vault up boards. I've seen people say he's taken himself from mid day 3 obscurity to potentially the edge of day 2, which, would be a big rise for him. So I need to turn to you guys now. Have you seen much of Sai'vion Jones? Obviously, LSU's a big school, so you may well have done. Ant says no. Ash?
Not recently, obviously, with so game I've been played. But it sounds, I think his upside, considering his physical profile and his versatility, maybe, is Eric Armstead. So obviously the former Niner now plays for the Jags. Both are 6'6". Armstead's 10 pounds heavier, 290. But there's a role that there's someone will gamble on the upside. I can certainly see someone of that sort of coaching tree. So 49ers, Houston, those kind of teams maybe taking a bank on him on the start of day 3 if they've got a pick in that range, just because they know how to use that kind of thing, that kind of play. And if they can get something out of him, great. If not, then someone else probably in free agency will, if they cut him, will be like, oh, we can try. He'll be one of those kind of athletic project players that gets passed around team to team until he finds the right fit. But when he does find the right fit, or everything, the light just switches on for him, he could be an absolute beast in the league. But it's because
just to say, by the way, at the Senior Bowl, I didn't have his updated height and weight. He's a verified 6'5", 289. So Armstead is exactly where he's at.
Armstead it is, and then there we go. But yeah, it's just the range of him getting to that upside is why he's day 3 guy. Like I would probably prefer him over Joyner. But if, let's say, we have a pick in the 4th or the 5th, and we have the chance to either take Tyler Batty or Sai'vion Jones, I'm probably taking Batty because you've got the higher floor there.
All right, that is Sai'vion Jones, and that is all of the guys we've specifically tried to have a look at. Now, I'd like to briefly turn our attention to the rest of the guys who could go on day 1 at this position. And I know that this won't be a person who is a Lion this season, but why don't we start talking a little bit about Abdul Carter, boys, who could be the number 1 pick in the NFL draft, could go number 2. A fall for him potentially at the moment might be that he gets to 5 or something like this. We're talking about a guy who is unlikely to get out of the top 5 considering the quarterback position at the moment. So Abdul Carter, if you don't know him, true junior out of Penn State. He was an outside linebacker. This year, he's been given the ability to play as a defensive end for the first time in a 4-3. So 7 to 9 technique all year. And his first year doing it, 68 tackles, 12 sacks, 24 tackles for a loss, which led the entire FBS, which is ridiculous given it's the first time you've played in that position. It's consensus All-American. It's the Big Ten Defensive Player of the Year. I did actually watch him just as much as I watched some of the other prospects, but man, the guy is just exciting in the way that he wins. I don't know if you guys have watched too much of him, but for me, there may only be, I think there's less than 5 blue chip players, and he's definitely one of them. The way that he's polished is maybe unlike anyone else in the position in this draft for me.
Yeah, and his floor is New England at 4 for me. But in reality, yeah, he's probably top 1 or 2. Like Tennessee have said, oh, yeah, there's a blue chip challenge, we're not going to pass on him. And everyone's like, oh, that's either Carter or it's Hunter. Obviously, everyone's connecting him to the Browns right now. If they make the trade to get rid of Myles Garrett, they're going to be wanting to get him because there's your almost perfect replacement. I know they're not like for like. Garrett's a bit bigger, but there's your perfect replacement. He is just the only way he could ever fall anywhere.
And it was obvious from a very young age. Again, he was in the 2023 to watch team, and that's back when he was Penn State's will linebacker. They weren't playing him on the edge. They did exact. This conversation was had that year. They never played Micah Parsons on the edge when they clearly should have done, and the same conversation was had with Abdul Carter, but they rectified that much quicker, and it was quite clear that he was put on this earth to go and kill quarterbacks, and he does. But he does also have the versatility if you need to play him in the middle a little bit as well and to do other jobs. But so he is versatile, but he's just devastating. Like, it's not a lazy comp to say he's in Micah Parsons' territory just because he comes from the same system. He is just as devastating. He is just as freakishly athletic. He is just as relentless. He can win you games on his own, and he should. Like, there shouldn't be a quarterback in the top 5 of this draft based on who are the best players of football in this draft. He is one of the best players of football in this draft. Yeah, and he should go 1. Very clearly. If you're sitting there as a Titan, screw your QB for now. Go out and get yourself a legit game changer, or and trade it for someone who does want him. But yeah, you should go first.
So if you do compare him and Micah Parsons, I think that Parsons potentially is a slightly better edge rusher. Just pure. I think that Abdul Carter is a better coverage player, significantly better coverage player. Micah Parsons was a good linebacker at college, but clearly edge rushing was what he was built for. Carter is one of the best edge rushers, pure edge rushers in this class, but he's also a very passable coverage player. And that's what excites me about him, is that you can do whatever you want with him. He's a Swiss Army knife type guy. But in terms of just pure athleticism, he's freakishly fast. And his anticipation off the ball is off the chart. He is getting out of his stance quicker than anyone else with the speed. And the thing is, he's a really high football IQ guy as well. So he is the full package. He can spin both ways as well. His spin move counterclockwise or clockwise is electric. So, you know, when you can wreck people like that, I mean, Hutch has showed you don't really need to do much else other than be able to spin both ways, and you will challenge players. And not that Hutch doesn't do other things, but that we know that's his calling card. And Carter's kind of like that as well, but he's so damn good at it. Like, oh my God, he's just an exciting player to watch. Like, there are
Parsons never rushed in college, though.
Yeah.
There's literally 7 pounds difference between them. That is it. They are the exact same physical profile. They are going to be the exact same type of player in the NFL. That's good. That he is going to be. He will get it. He will, whatever Parsons earns for his contract, this one will earn better. Literally just because of the growing cap and that.
Yeah,
but they are both phenomenal. Penn State defenders are some of the best taught in the country.
I think the thing about Carter that should be frightening is that he's not a polished pass rusher, and he's this good. Like, there's so much more you can add to his arsenal. Like, this is nowhere near as good as he's going to be. And he's already potentially a top 2 pick. That's the selling point for him, is he's this good and he's going to get better. So, yeah. All right, other players that I wanted us to get to. Jalon Walker out of Georgia. So Walker, true junior again, Georgia outside linebacker, and he is a proper outside linebacker, plays mostly as a Will or a Sam in a 4-3 look, played some 3-4 outside linebacker as well. 6'2", 245, PFF grade of 73.1 this year, but because he's predominantly a linebacker, you have to adjust your expectations in terms of PFF grades. Linebackers get graded to shit, whereas edge rushers, when they get sacks, get graded to high heavens. So, you know, reset your expectations on what PFF are telling you with this, because it's not apples to apples when you have a look at him and an edge rusher, despite the fact that he does rush a bit. This year, 60 tackles, 6.5 sacks, 11 tackles for a loss, 2 passes defended, 2 fumble recoveries. He won the Dick Butkus Award for the best linebacker this year. He's only a 1-year starter, He was a rotational player in the last 2 years at Georgia. I think, and potentially you might be the highest of all of us on him. I know that you're a bit of a fan of Jalen Walker.
Yeah, he's going to be great. And again, he's probably just not. His ceiling is massive because he's just not even beginning to tap his potential there. But his greatest asset, and he's another he's dinged for his size. But this depends on the scheme he lands in. But when I tell you he has a Bosa level first step, he has a Bosa level first step, and that's how he gets you. His get off is just so damn quick. Doesn't matter how big you are, doesn't matter how strong you are. You watch some of his best plays in college, he just gets on top of you, and then that size doesn't matter because he's gone. And that explosion is the selling point with him. You've just got to learn to adapt against the run. And again, his size, you need to get that counter repertoire up. You need to get off blocks a little bit better. But as a impact pass rusher, he's already got everything he needs, and he's only ever going to get better as well. So as a bare minimum, if you can't trust him in the run game, at least in the short term, you've got to send him out there every time you've got an opportunity to hunt the quarterback, and he's going to sack him a lot of times. He's just got all the traits and intangibles you need for it, and I've seen enough that he could be great. Like I don't know where he'd draft. It wouldn't be really, really, really high, but yeah. Like I say, he's got what he needs. That first step's just going to absolutely kill you at the next level, and a lot of tackles just won't be able to deal with him, regardless of the size. So I think he's going to be good with the right development and in the right system.
Ash, have you seen much of him?
His floor is 15 with Atlanta. He's not leaving the state of Georgia. I think Raheem Morris is going to absolutely love the fuck out of him. They like Atlanta's been crying out for a proper pass rusher. That's why they traded for Matthew Judon. They're going to get it with Walker. That is, if he's there at 15, they're running the card in. They're going to get in trouble like we did with Hutch. They're just going to absolutely love him because he'll fit their system to a T.
It's like because everyone's seen what Philly have been able to do with the Georgia boys. Like Jaden Davis and that, people were going, well, yeah, he's athletic and that, but can he translate it to the next level? Yeah, he can. And he's got everything you want. Like, he's got everything you want apart from the size against the run. But outside of that, he just ticks every single box. Somebody is going to find a way to use him to that effect. And I agree with that. He won't go that low. Teams develop the correct sort of player and give them the correct sort of mindset, and you've just got to finish them off, and that's what someone will do.
For me, I did do another write-up of him as well. And when I said Abdul Carter just makes you excited about how he plays, Jalen Walker maybe more so than Abdul Carter in terms of just someone who just makes you love the game when you're watching him. He's definitely raw, but you can see how intelligent he is as a player with his ability to run the routes of the players that he's covering in coverage. But with the way that he can bend when he is pass rushing, the problem he's had is he's barely been asked to pass rush. He's had less than 400 pass rushing snaps in his college career. Total. Like, he's had very little opportunity to do it, but when you watch him do it, you think, my God, this could be the best player in this draft. If everything comes to fruition for him, when I see him be third on Dane Brugler's board, he then did qualify that, and he said he thinks basically 3 to 12 is basically equal. So he said you could put anyone there that you want. The thing that just really impresses me about him is that before this season, he played 362 snaps total. He was a person who was directing traffic, telling people what to do, how to line up, how to think. He was the guy communicating everything in that Georgia defense. Well, that Georgia defense is fucking good and has been for the longest time. And how little he's played and how important he was to what they did. Like, he had a 73.1 grade by PFF, and he won best linebacker in the nation. Like, this is what tells you that PFF isn't worth its salt, or that you have to temper your expectations when it comes to grades, because what you see from him with your eyes is so much different than maybe his production is showing. And I do think, when it comes to, I say you can run routes for people, I think he's much better in run defense than people give him credit for. He's going to read his gap, he's going to fill it, and maybe he will get knocked back because he's a little bit lighter, but he's going to be in the right place at the right time, and then the tackle may look like a bit of a loss because he'll go 1 yard back, but some linebackers ain't going to be in that gap, and then you're getting another 4 or 5 yards. Like, the intelligence that he shows, even though he's a little bit lighter, like, I absolutely love what he puts out on tape. And to be honest, I'd be really interested to see what would happen if you just put him edge, like with Micah Parsons or what have you. Now, he's the same height and the same weight as Micah Parsons coming out. So we say he's light, but he's not light. He's not 220. He's 245. Like, give him a go. See what we can do.
He played early as well. He's confident. He could have stayed another year and refined it all and gone first round next year or first overall next year. When you show a level of confidence to come up like that, I like that, because he thinks he knows that he can deal with it, and he can, with more time in the NFL. So I love his attitude towards it.
All right, the next guy, I've got a few more to talk about who might go in the first round. The next one is someone that a lot of people I know like. And so I want to set the table for his physical profile and then maybe turn it over straight away, because I have other thoughts about this man. And that's James Pierce Jr. from Tennessee. He's a true junior. Plays on the edge, 6'5", 243, so tall and slim. I mean, same weight as Jalen Walker, but 2 to 3 inches taller. 87.1 PFF grade. Plays most of his reps at 4-3 edge, but does take some reps at 3-4 outside linebacker. Last year, 38 tackles, 7.5 sacks, 13 tackles for a loss, pass defended, forced fumble recovery. 2-year starter at Tennessee. Basically a redshirt in 2022, but I think he just about had enough active games where he wasn't a redshirt, so true junior instead of being a redshirt sophomore. Over 50 pressures when he started for Tennessee, so very productive. 13 sacks in 2022 compared to 8 in his most recent year, so very productive player. Do either of you have any strong takes about James Pierce particularly?
I mean, I'm on record as saying he could have been number 1 overall pick in a draft. And you talk about Jalen Walker being potentially the best player in this draft out of the lot of them. James Pierce has a strong claim to that title as well. He could be the best player out of this draft class, potentially. This was based on his 2023 season. He was a redshirt sophomore, absolutely lit the world on fire last year. But because how he did it, because again he was new to the position. He had his great first year, but he was winning, speed to strength. There were very few ways he was very good at what he did, and then the thing for him this year was he needed to just open that arsenal up a little bit and to just vary what he does. And he had a little bit of a down year. Now, I know, because again, Tennessee tried to, with his weight and his stuff over the summer, they tried to make him more athletic. They tried to mess with him, and it's messed with his development. And he's had a little bit of a down year by their standards, and he's not been as good. If he learns a couple of counters, he will be unstoppable as a pass rusher. He is that damn good. He will beat you with his strength. He will beat you with his speed. He will do what he likes. He just needs to technically get better and, just maybe unfuck around with him, because they made him lose a bit of weight. And he's playing about 240 this year, something like that. Should be playing at 240 this year, especially in SEC against some of them guys. Put the weight back on, and then you will be great. There is still that player in him. he is still potential best player in this draft class within the next 5 years. Again, and it seems a corny thing to say, but you've got to land in the right place with the right people. And that's the same with every single draft prospect out there. But his ceiling is absolutely huge. He's just not, he's got to learn. He needs to get a technical D-line coach who's going to get that into him, because the rest of it is already sorted. So I did say it could still happen, but he's a sleeping giant.
He seems, I haven't seen too much of him, but he seems the kind of guy that the Ravens, or potentially us, like the really good drafting teams who just let the ball fall to them and then take the best player available, seems the kind of guy they pick, and then 2 years down the line, like, how the fuck did we let them get that kind of player? Like what the Ravens did with Cole Hamilton a couple of years ago, just let him fall to them, and now he's one of the best safeties in the league when they're not fucking around with his positioning. He's that kind of player, and to be honest, Baltimore do kind of need an edge rusher because their edge room's kind of falling away. So pencil him in there. I'm really giving away some of my first round mock draft picks here. So God help me in our little competition in a couple of weeks. But he just seems that kind of player that he'll fall to them somehow. They'll scoop him up. And then, yeah, we'll look at the end of next year when he's won defensive rookie of the year. I'll be like, the fuck?
Yeah, it's such an interesting evaluation because Ant's right. Like, the ceiling is so high, but playing at that weight is just hampered him massively. Like, watching him on tape, and I want to come in and say, I don't believe in him. Because, well, why would you? Like, he's got production, but he needs girth, he needs weight. Like, he's already got an impressive bull rush for his weight, but it's an impressive bull rush for his weight. If he was playing at 20 pounds heavier, conservatively, maybe more, that could be a wrecking ball of a player. But he wasn't afforded that opportunity. He's very, very good against the run already, so maybe not 20 pounds, maybe that's too much, maybe 15, get him to 260. I think 260 would be a good weight for someone like that. But I think you're right, and in terms of needing him to go to a sort of technical developer, because I don't think he's got particularly much in his pass rush arsenal. He tries to crush a can. He has good explosion off the ball. He can win with a speed rush. He's got a good timing on his punch, which means he can get around the edge. But that's it. That's all I've seen on tape so far. And so get someone who can polish him a little bit, give him a few more pass rush moves, put him a little bit of meat on the bone. He could be fantastic. I have like the lowest first round grade on him that I can, because you have to kind of do something with him. You haven't got the physical specimen that you want at the moment. So first year for him is going to be maybe not quite as good as you want it to be, but year 2 could be fantastic, depending on what you do with him. But these guys where you fuck around with their weight, it's not a recipe for success. There's not a lot of guys who've had their weight fucked around with, and it goes well for them. And sometimes in the NFL, that's because those organisations don't know what the fuck they're doing. Whereas with him, I do kind of feel like Tennessee have done him dirty a little bit. I don't know. Ant's looking sceptical.
No, I think he's... Yeah. If you drafted on potential, he'd be top 5. But it's not his fault that it's gone the way it has with him. Yeah, if the right team picks him up, he'll be scary.
All right, the next one we've got 4 more to go. Next one is a lot of people's favourite edge rusher, but this is someone who is falling dramatically at the moment, and I don't want to overdo how much it is, but I think it is something, and that is Nick Scourton. Nick Scourton, the junior of Texas A&M. He's an edge rusher, 6'4", 285, so a big end type guy, PFF grade of 80 in this past year. 5'9" technique at his weight. He does play inside, he does play outside, but he's definitely going to be a defensive line guy. 2-year player at Purdue before that, before moving to A&M. 37 tackles, 5 sacks, 14 TFLs this year, 2 passes defended and a forced fumble. Let's just turn to you guys first. Have you seen much from Scourton at all? Because he was someone who was like a top 10 player, maybe, about 2 months ago. And suddenly, he seems to be a consensus second-round pick now.
We had this argument the other week. Nick Scourton is a very good player of football, and fuck the people who are down on him. They did the same with George, and he's won several Super Bowls now. So go screw you all. You got to bet against these guys. He come from the Purdue School of Technical Refinement, and he's got some great moves. He's heavier. And again, they've sort of messed around with his alignment a little bit. They're trying to play him a bit more inside. They said that's what they'll do with him at the next level as well. And obviously, the big difference from going from Purdue to Tamu, with the expectations and that there, how many 5-stars have busted out of Tamu in recent years? It's not the best place to go, and we hated the fact that he made the move there. But as a guy, technically, he is really good. Athletically, maybe, there is a little bit to be desired there. But he knows how to get to the quarterback. He's got the moves to get to the quarterback. He has the frame to be great against the run. I don't really see the downside. When I look at some of the other guys there, people get all gooey-eyed over Shamar Turner and frauds like this who are not even fit to lace his boots, and yet they call him the first-round picks. Now, Nick Scourton falls, and he's sat there when we're there, then they're going to be talking in 2 years about how the NFL is colluding to let us get all the great players again, because he shouldn't be. And you snap him up in a heartbeat if he's there. It's crazy. People like the flashy athletic guys this type of year, and that's why guys like Scourton fall.
Yeah, I haven't seen too much of him, but he is someone that's entered my radar because of that fall where he's quite consistently aligned mock draft pick. Like I've got Tankathon up just to help with the draft order. He is our pick at 28 according to them, and he does fit our scheme. And I know obviously like the alignments, it hasn't helped him so much this season. He's had a bit of a drop off in production according to Batty, from 8 to 4 this year in terms of sacks, 2 less hits, same amount of hurries, 2 less batted passes. I'll still be very happy if we take him because it's been like we were talking about spin moves earlier. Isn't one of Scourton's nicknames the Human Tornado?
I called him the Texas Tornado.
That's it, the Texas Tornado. Yeah, Texas Tornado. Imagine him next to Hutch, like the two masters of the spin move. We've got the Sonic and Knuckles on the offense, and then we've got the Beyblades on the in the defense.
He really does jump off the page physically when you watch him play. Like, he's a huge human being. Can crusher, got pass rush skills, got a lot of, polish already on him. Could do with some counters, doesn't... If he loses, he's kind of lost. He doesn't get back to win again. Like, he needs to win initially, so there's stuff to do. It's not like he's a finished article. I was down on him before. I've watched him a bit more. I'm a bit more up on him now. The spin move is lethal. Again, he's a kind of low first rounder for me. What's really fun, which I didn't notice, is that he drops under coverage a lot. At 285 pounds. It's ridiculous. And he's got the athleticism to do it. He's fast, and he's got some good IQ. He knows when he's doing it, why he's doing it, and what he's covering. And that makes him a dangerous weapon. Like, from the edge player position, or from inside, he will drop. And I quite like him doing it, low-key. So the game I watched for him was against LSU, where the majority of the time he was going up against Will Campbell. He was winning as many as he was losing, and Will Campbell might be a top 5 pick in this draft, depending on how people feel about him and whether he's a guard or whether he's a tackle. But Will Campbell's one of the best O-linemen in this draft, and he was giving him trouble, even in this year where people were seemingly a bit more down on him than they were when he was at Purdue. So I certainly have changed my tack from a few weeks ago where I said to Ant, I don't see it. I do see it. I do. So if he's the pick at 28, I wouldn't be surprised.
I had flashbacks, and I always had to remind myself that Glenn's gone now. I don't have to worry about our edge rushers dropping into coverage on tight ends and running backs anymore.
I mean, you say that, but are you sure? I mean, we've got a DC now who's been in this system all this time, who's been preached the same things as the other guys. So why not?
True. I just don't want to see James Houston versus Noah Fant again. I still have flashbacks to that.
So the next guy I've got on here, which is someone I actually don't have a profile up for at all, so I'm going to have to be helped by some of our guys here. And that is the other Texas A&M edge rusher who Ant has alluded to earlier already, which is Shamar Stewart. I don't know if anyone has a
6'6", 290.
Thank you,
junior.
And you obviously have a take on Shamar Stewart, but I mean, give us the up and the down on him.
The up is he's strong and fast. The down is he doesn't know how to rush the passer. Does that sound familiar?
Yes.
Does that sound like a battle I have very often? Shamar Stewart is going to absolutely kick the combine and kick the Ras, and everyone's going to go, "Oh my God, he's amazing! He's 6'6", he's 285, he's athletic as fuck. Draft him." Yeah, dude's never had 2 sacks in a season, ever, off the edge. He's got no pass rush plan. He doesn't know how to get to the passer, and if his speed and his strength don't do it for him, he got nothing. And people say this is a first-round pick, while genuinely talented edge rushers like Nick Skowett and apparently are not. He's this year's Ras enemy for me. They're going to make him out to be great, but when you produce so little in your time at college, and let's not forget, it's not like he's been devoid of good teammates at TAMU. Walter Nolan, Nick Skowton, all these guys, 5 stars every year. And Shamar Turner, the other one who's meant to be going day 3, which is probably where Shamar Stewart should go as well. He's not been short of talent there to help him, and the lack of productivity is astonishing. He is a former high 5-star recruit who had a lot of thoroughfare behind him, who's not lived up to expectation. Not even close. But the analytics are going to love him, so it doesn't matter. Spend your first-round pick on him. I'm sorry, I'm very biased on this, but I feel like I'm right more often than not when it comes to guys like this. He's got nothing. There is no originality. There is no moves. There is no nothing. This is just a guy who thinks he's bigger and stronger than everyone else and will beat him that way. And that does not fly in the NFL. Technicians will eat him alive.
Yeah, so 1.5 sacks every single year in his college career, 31 tackles, 14 solos, 6 TFLs, 2 passes defended, and a forced fumble in this most recent season. 39 pressures, converting into those 2 sacks. He gets 2 sacks, well, 1.5 sacks, 2 sacks by PFF because they don't give halves. That came off the back of a 23.5% missed tackle rate. Probably one of the highest we've seen out of all the players we've talked about so far. He hasn't had a season where his missed tackle rate is below 20%. He had a much better year this year than he's had in his career so far, but it's from a low base, and he beat up on Bowling Green, Arkansas, and South Carolina, who are not mugs, but he had his worst games against Missouri, Florida, LSU, and New Mexico State.
You didn't say a good team there.
No, I didn't. Like, he had mediocre games against Auburn, Texas, Miss State, McNeese, Notre Dame. Middling games. Like, okay, so against really good teams and against really bad teams, you have middling games. You had bad games against not great teams, and then you had really good games against a couple of... I mean, Arkansas weren't great last year, if I remember rightly. Bowling Green were fine, but they weren't fantastic. And then South Carolina were worse than the previous year, if I remember rightly. Like, they weren't...
South Carolina were really good this year.
Okay.
Better than they've been.
Why did I think they were good with Rattler? Am I going mad?
They were.
Nah,
They were.
they're much better with Lenoris Sellers. They ended up this season really well, and they lost to LSU by 1 score to beat Bama by 1 score. They really should have been a playoff team.
Fair. All right. Sorry.
I was about to say what the good news is. We had this battle a couple of years ago about someone who was getting mocked at the end of the first round, basically entirely on their traits. And then they went at pick 110 to the Colts.
Yes, they did.
So luckily for us, we don't have to worry unless Brad gets a hyperfixated.
No,
Please.
they'll take one look, and no, I'm sorry. You've not bothered to develop. You've not bothered to develop your moves. You've not bothered to develop your plan. There's no one I want less. Let's put it that I would sooner take a tight end. I would sooner take I'd take a long snapper there over him. I generally would. So
yeah.
And for all of the people who weren't listening to us in that draft class, just tell the people who you were talking about. Because it's bad when you allude to someone without saying it.
I'm not going to have to say it anyway. Aditom Weaver, Adebawe.
Adebawe. Adebawe from
there we go. That's why I didn't
Northwestern.
say it, because I knew I was going to butcher the names. It's like I am going to save some face.
Well, remember though, everybody loved him at the combine. Oh my God, he's going to be like a pick in the 30s. No, he's not. He really, really, really isn't.
We have got 2 more potential first-round picks based on where they are in consensus at the moment. Or I'm throwing in one because he might be a bit more suited to the Lions, but he's probably a round 2 guy. The next one, the last one who might sneak into the back of the first round, is Arkansas's Landon Jackson. Now, I think he's probably a round 2 guy, but we'll see. So Landon Jackson, he is 6'6", 260. No, the PFF say 6'7", 280. So depends on college stats have him 6'6", 260. So anyway, I'll go with PFF. I think that's more reliable. Anyway, he went to the Senior Bowl, didn't he?
Senior Bowl, yeah.
So there should be
measurements.
Yeah. So 3-year Arkansas player, starter in all 3 years. 82.9 grade this season, 35 pressures, 7 sacks, so 20%. 13% missed tackle rate this year. He's a guy who has some versatility, seems to play between the 5 and the 9. That's all I have, really. His better games came against LA Tech and Miss State and UAB. His worst games came against Ole Miss, Missouri, LSU, and a team that's acronym I don't recognize. Arkansas Pine Buff. So Bluff. Thank you, not Buff. Anyway, what have you guys seen from Landon Jackson? I mean, he had. I think he was falling before the Senior Bowl. And then he had a really good Senior Bowl.
Oh, well, I heard differently. Sarah says he was not impressed at all with what he saw from Landon Jackson.
Okay, I thought the game itself he did well. Or am I going mad?
I think so, yes. The PFF have him at the game, have him at a 97.5 defense grade with a 94.8 pass rushing grade, with 12 snaps, 2 pressures. But...
at the risk of doing my own crusade in here, he was up against Carson Vincent. So, yeah,
that's a name. Yep, there's the name I've heard.
I'm trying not to do my HBCU dude down, but yeah.
For everyone who isn't aware of him, he's an Alabama A&M tackle.
He's good.
He had a great week. He just had a very bad game, but he had a wonderful week.
Jackson was someone that was on my radar for that big end role, someone to look at the end of the first round. And I haven't seen much of him yet because I was focusing on our guys that we were doing this week. But from what I've heard, it's one of them where the kind of what's happening with Nick Skousen just on a bigger scale, that the production this year just wasn't there for him. So 35 pressures, 7 of which were sacks, which is good, but they're beating up on the he's beaten up on some like bad teams. Like it's not good luck. Like up going against LSU, which I think he was going up against Will Campbell because he was obviously their right end at that point, and you're only getting a 60, like barely above an average grade. It's not really a good look for you because when you're coming up against NFL caliber guys and you're not really doing too much, ain't a good look.
I do know a bit about because he was a Razorback when KJ was. That was back when I used to watch Arkansas all the time. You can copy and paste what you said about Shamar Stewart. His intangibles are what are appealing for him, but he's quite tall. He plays tall. There are just so many examples of guys who get underneath him and just completely stunt anything he has to offer. Obviously, the big thoroughfare. I remember, what was it now? I think it was Bama, and he sacked Milrow 5 times, I think it was, in a game. He absolutely wrecked them.
Yeah.
And that was where he came to prominence. I remember watching that and thinking, Jesus Christ, this guy is good. And he's just never sort of carried on with that. It's just inconsistency in play. I'm kind of glad Riz has seen it as well, that, if you just take the measurables and the athleticism, he's like a wet dream for you. But if you take into account that he is also just technically underdeveloped, his leverage sucks. There's too many problems with his game, and there's a lot of problems to fix. Can you do it? You're going to need someone who's good. You're going to have to take a while to get him right as well. So you're picking high on day 2 and you're taking him on a development guy. That's a big risk. So he can do it, but he just doesn't do it very often, which is going to be the quandary. And I think he will fall as a result of that. He might even fall into territory where you're like, hang on, maybe if he's still knocking around when the Lions pick again, and you're
60.
like, yeah. If you get to there and he's still not, you're right. Okay, there will be a point where the upside becomes too tantalizing for somebody. But yeah, you don't take him as a starter right away.
For context, that game was week 7 last year. 4 sacks and 1 hurry on Milrow on 20 pass rushing snaps.
I can't remember who the tackle was, but I'm pretty sure he got the tackle benched, whoever it was.
Give me a second.
It was a massacre. Absolute massacre. I'm pretty sure Alabama still won that game as well, which was the funny thing. That's just the year my KJ dreams died. It's still a tough time for me to process.
Elijah Pritchett.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, he got benched, I think, after that. Or he got a very big telling off.
Yeah, he didn't play against 11 against Satoku.
Yeah, he got proper lit up after that one.
The last player that I'm going to throw into this conversation is someone who's probably around to pick, but he gets enough love with the Lions because of the player that he is that I want to talk about him here. One of the Ohio State duo, he is Jack Sawyer, who I know has a few fans on this show. Briefly, Jack Sawyer is 6'5", 260. He is a 4-year player at Ohio State. I think he is a 2-year starter, 2-year rotational player before that. Really broke out in 2023 and maintains that through this season. Went from strength to strength in terms of the pass rush. Went from 37 pressures to 64 pressures from 23 to 24 while maintaining the PFF grade. So that's pretty exceptional in itself. What hurt him was kind of the missed tackle rate went from 7% to 17%. But when you have that many more pressures, you've got that many more opportunities to miss a tackle. Like what I was saying before, sometimes the missed tackle rate isn't the best indicator of who someone is, because if you've got more chances to make tackles, you'll miss more. Just one of those things. Plays all of his reps, I think, on the outside between the 7 to 9 technique, pretty much. Seems to have his better games in the big moments, especially against Texas in the playoffs. He absolutely ruined them, but he also had his way with Iowa as well. Michigan, he had a really good game. Tennessee didn't have the best game against Notre Dame in the last game before. Obviously, they fell. Before they fell, before they won. I'm an idiot. In the championship game against Notre Dame, he didn't have his best game. What do you guys think about Jack Sawyer, especially about his fit with us specifically?
I really like him. Simple. If he's there at 28, he's top 3 players that I want at 28.
Buzzsaw. Whatever Michigan broke him in a good way. When they planted the flag for a second time, there's the viral reaction of him. And they, like when you break a psychopath into becoming a megalomaniacal genius instead of sending him insane, that's what they did. You saw him playing the player. He's like, okay, hell no, you're not doing this to me. And Jesus, like I liked him before that. He was all right, but then I just saw a side to him that if they've brought out that guy permanently, then hell yes. And I've said this already. I would, if you do draft him, I'd get him and Hutch in a room and I'd say, sack leader gets to take the other one to the game dressed in their team's colours. And I would just say, may the best man win. Those two will probably end up killing somebody. Like, you imagine one of them wanting to do that? No. Absolutely not. You pit them against one another as teammates and you just watch the things unfold. The missed tackle stuff, I understand why he plays one way. He plays 200%, 200 miles an hour. You've got to rein it in a minute, but I can understand the passion and where it came from at the time of asking and getting to the playoffs. And you're in a corner, your back's against the wall, nobody's got faith in you, and you just go out there and play the way you do. I'd rather him play like that. Like, his issue for him, like, why he doesn't go with the elite edges is he doesn't bend. Like, if you want the, like, elite bend around the edges, you want that kind of cornering technique from him. He doesn't have that. He will just run his way through you. He's got good hands. He'll find ways to get through. He's just not got the flashier aspects of his pass rush. But in terms of a Dan Campbell player, yeah, he's in that category as well. Like, I'd imagine them two would just talk for hours and bounce off one another, and they'd be punching each other at the end and like injuring one another up, and that's who he is. And if we do get him, we have Michigan to thank for it because they literally broke him and made him better.
Yeah, I love him. He is a lion. He's a gritty player. Also, former high school quarterback, which really tells you about the sort of intelligence that he has playing at the edge position. He knows what a quarterback wants to do. He recognizes the cadence. He knows and can... He's a good predictor of what happens. Yes, the lack of bend is going to hurt, but he's just smart.
He's not that sort of player either. Not every red rusher is designed to bend. Some of the great ones just run you over. I'd be interested to see where if Eric does his grit index again, where he'd land on it. I reckon he'd probably break it.
I think him and his like the person that helps him with it are working on it because I know he's starting to do his like combine stuff now. So he's
not a Michigan man, is he? So he shouldn't. He's not.
He's Michigan State.
Oh, is he? Oh well, then by technicality, then two are allies, so he should probably bump his score up. So there'll be no undue bias in there. I reckon he'll break Eric's grit scale. Potentially.
Yeah. All right. I postulated a question, which is the name of the show on YouTube, which is this the best edge class of recent years? So I just wanted to briefly put that question to you guys, and I'm going to read out the last 2 edge classes, and then I want to go through this list of names and see what you think. So in 2023, the edge class looked like this as the potential first rounders. Will Anderson, Tyree Wilson, Miles Murphy, Lucas Van Ness, Will McDonald. That was it. Just see if there are any outside linebackers in here as well. Nolan Smith. 2024, we saw Dallas Turner, Leatu Latu, Jared Verse, Chop Robinson. That was it for the edges. Outside linebackers, no one. This year, potentially, we have Abdul Carter, Nick Scowerton. I will leave out Jalen Walker because he's more of a linebacker with pass rush upside. So Carter, Scowerton, Pierce, Michael Williams, who we haven't talked about, actually. I've missed him out, my bad. Shamar Stewart, Mike Green, Landon Jackson, Jack Sawyer. I think it's close. I think it's up there in these three classes. I think potentially having someone... Oh, I don't know. Last year, Turner flattered to deceive. Latu was okay. Verse was obviously excellent. Chop Robinson had a really good year, but that's it. That's all there was in that year. In the prior year to that, we've got Nolan Smith, who's obviously developed really well, and Will Anderson, and fuck all else, really, in terms of result. I think this is the best class of the last 3 years at the edge position. I really do.
That seems a very hollow title. I want to go. I want to go further back and have a look because
let me go further back for you then.
In terms of depth, this might be the most stacked depth class there's been in some time. But how many potential Hall of Famers you're looking at here?
Oh,
like you've got classes like when in JJ Watt and Cam Jordan and stuff like that came out. They're going into the Hall of Fame. There's a lot of Hall of Famers there. So, and even if you look back to, what was it? The classes again. You know, the year where you've got Hutch, you've got Carl Aftis, like Carl Aftis, Super Bowl winner, multiple Super Bowl winner. Hutch is going to be absolutely great. I still think Trayvon Walker's going to eventually work out. Kayvon with it. I still think that's potentially a good draft class. I think it's just going to take time for them. But I think in terms of depth, this feels like we're the first rigid depth class in a long time. Like the first 2 days are a plentiful treasure trove of guys who could do it. But in terms of all-time great, I'm not seeing the potential Hall of Famers just yet. Outside of Abdul Carter, he could be.
So for me, because I did go back a bit further, this is the best edge class since 2019. So that 2019 class, you've got Bosa at 2 overall, Brian Burns at 16, Montez Sweat at 26. Then you've got Max Crosby at 106. What a pickup. That's the DE's outside linebacker. You've got Josh Hines-Allen at 7, Rashawn Gary at 12. I know we don't like him too much, but he's
a good player.
He's a good pass rusher. So you've got that. It's in terms of first round talents, including Max Crosby, because Crosby should have been. He just fell because people are stupid. This is kind of the deepest class since then for me. Like going back. But yeah, there's not the top end talent. Like 2022, which was the Hutch class, you have the potential for at least one Hall of Famer with Hutch, potentially more. But in terms of depth, yes, the best since 2019.
I mean, I'm just trying to think of any other good ones recently. There was the class Garrett and Hendrickson came together.
2017.
That might have been 18, 17. I think Jonathan Allen was in that draft class as well. That's some good guys
2017 was good. 2017, you had... Let me just get it up. You had, obviously, Garrett at 1. Jonathan Allen at 17. His class is listed as a DE. So there's 2 really good ones at the top, but they're not a lot below. But then you go to outside linebacker. And I believe... Is he there? Oh, for God's sake, where is he? I swear that was Trey Hendrickson's listed as a linebacker, so that's 3rd round. But pick 30, TJ Watt. Pick 13, Hassan Reddick, who's come on in recent years after going to a competent team.
Yeah, so I mean it might have some going for that, but I think depth wise, you can say it's pretty good.
Mm-hmm. All right,
it's
Yeah, we have a couple of questions to get to just before we wrap up here. Carlton asks, how many snaps do we think a Lions round 1 or round 2 drafted edge will play, i.e. situational third down rusher only, or 3 down edge like Hutch, or big end shifting inside in NASCAR package? I think this is a really hard question to answer. There's so many different types of edges that we've highlighted here. My answer would be, it depends, and I'm really sorry for bitching out the question. I don't know if anyone else has a stronger take.
I agree. Like, if you take a Nick Scouser who could slot in day one at big end, they're going to probably play a lot of snaps. If you take someone who's a bit more developmental, then they're probably going to take the 293 that AQ took this year.
It depends. What I would like is I would like to get a vet in free agency and then a high price draft pick and just go balls to the wall to it. So I would like our new edge. If we're going to pick an edge in round 1 of the draft, I would like them to be edge 3. Like, I would like it to be that depth that we've got, where we can wheedle them in a little bit and just give them time, get them set, get them ready, and then go with it. We don't want to do what we did with Hutch, where we just string him out there every single snap we can, every single week. So I would rather they play a little less because we've got depth there. But I will scream to death if we take someone who they're going to just fuck around and try and play on the inside as well as outside. I want someone who's going to go and kill a quarterback. That is what I want.
I'm with you. And we also had a question from Jamie Clark on YouTube as well, who asked, do we think that the defensive tackle class is stronger than the edge class? And do we think that the defensive tackle is increasingly more important than edge as a position?
I've not checked, but out of just of my recent memory, this is going to be the best D tackle class in a long time. They have been piss poor in recent years. Very, very poor. This one is going to be absolutely... This might be one of the biggest classes this year. D tackles. You're going to get some fantastic ones. And with all the edges going at the top, it's just going to... increase the value you're going to get for some of these guys. But it starts with, future Hall of Famer Mason Graham and then works its way down. It's insane how good it is this year. Last few years we've done this, genuinely, we've struggled to maybe have five guys in the top 100. You've struggled to talk about DT prospects in general. I'm not going to say how far back this would go, but I reckon if you were to tell me this might be the best class in a decade, I would say there's a better chance than not, but I can't think back that far, so I would have to come back. But I'd be relatively confident.
This is the best D tackle class since 2019. Quinnen Williams.
That draft was pretty decent.
Quinnen Williams, Ed Oliver, Christian Wilkins, Dexter Lawrence, Jeffrey Simmons, all in the top 19.
That's pretty good.
Crazy. But yeah,
that's insane.
I would have to check the list out. I reckon this could rival that. But depth-wise, again, this is going to be... I don't know what the depth was like for that draft.
Tell me when to stop in terms of first-round DTs then, because I'll read out this is off PFF's big board. This is their rankings. Mason Graham. Walter Nolan.
Yeah.
Kenneth Grant.
Yeah.
Tyleek Williams.
Fringe.
TJ Sanders.
No.
Okay, so 1, 2, 3, 4. 2019 beats it just. In terms of top,
I mean, this is in pure speculation, but
true. What was the depth like? Okay, so depth for that. Draymond Jones for the Broncos, Kalen Saunders for the Chiefs. I do actually really like him. Isaiah Buggs, but that's about it. Yeah.
All right, I'll make a hot take here. Mason Graham will be better than anybody in that 2019 draft class, and it won't be particularly close. He will be a lot better. He will be a lot better. That is my hot take from this.
Fair. All right.
I'm clipping that off. Jesus.
Love it. Now you've got your internet back. It's coming.
He's a freak of nature. He's a freak of nature. If I don't ever want the Lions to, draft top 5 again unless we've traded with a shitty team and got their pick off them. I don't ever want to do it again. But if there was ever a draft, I'd be up there for a guy. He would be the guy.
All right, we're going to draw this to a close because we've been going for a long time. So apologies to everyone for having to listen to all of that. If you have, well done. You're still here. Our next show will be the College Football Podcast. And what are you talking about this week?
It is HBCU Legacy Ball week, so we'll be chatting that and a few other bits as well. So, yeah.
Amazing. And this time next week, we will be talking another position from this NFL draft class. I've nominally put in here wide receivers, but it is up for debate. We're going to have a little chat after the show just to see what we land on in terms of where we want to go. But that's where my mind was going in terms of trying to get different sides of the ball each week, potentially. But we'll let you know, and we'll schedule it up on YouTube so you know what's coming well in advance. But just want to thank Ant and Ash for doing this with me, and hopefully everything is good with Ryan. He did prepare a few guys that we haven't actually talked about, so frustrating that he wasn't able to be here, but hopefully he'll be here next week for the next one. Thank you all for listening. Carl says Combine talk next week, so the Combine starts, I think, in between our next show and the show after. So...
Oh, yeah, I've got to do the Combine list as well. Yeah, I forgot about that.
I think the Combine list is potentially going to be one which is talked about in the college football show rather than the main podcast, I suspect.
I mean, we usually do. But I think it starts on the Tuesday. It goes through the Wednesday, Thursday, Friday for all the training, then the drills and that. They stagger them. So, like, all the tests start on the Tuesday, I think, and then the actual physical drills start on...
Thursday.
The Thursday.
Yeah.
And then they rotate round. So the last group who check in on the Thursday do theirs on the Sunday. I can't remember which. I think they usually do QBs, running backs first, and then it's like skill players offensively, and then defense. I think if they do it right, they may have changed it. There should be a list out somewhere, but we'll certainly discuss the Combine list.
So Thursday is, of course, as soon as I click on it, it decides to actually load off. Oh, bastard. Thursday is your defensive linemen and your linebackers. Friday is defensive backs, tight ends. Saturday, QBs, wide receivers, running backs. And Sunday, the big behemoths are the offensive linemen.
Oh. I feel like that's changed from recent years. It might have just been me. Got the wrong way around.
All right, anyway, that is our show. Join us for those shows later on this week or early next. Hope you have a fantastic week, everybody. Socials, you know where to find us. We're all the Lions UK. Support us any way you can. Much appreciated. We're considering posting some of our draft profiles for some of these guys on the website, so do keep a look out there. We're trying to make him all snazzy for you guys. But otherwise, have a great week. We'll see you soon. For now, let's go Last One Pride.
One Pride.
One Pride.
Recording stopped.